Welcome to Simplified UPSC by PPP, where we listen, learn, and grow together.
Welcome back to another deep dive. You sent us a truly intensive stack of sources. This time, it covers everything from the deep physics of Earth's magnetic core all the way to the surprisingly fragile finances of our city halls.
And it's all mixed in with cutting-edge cybersecurity and the biology of our own digital habits.
It's an intellectual roller coaster, really, that bridges the physical planet with the digital infrastructure we're all trying to build on top of it.
Indeed. And our sources today, they really highlight these profound and I think often overlooked intersections between the digital world, the harsh realities of governance, and, well, fundamental planetary stability.
So what's our mission today?
Our mission, as always, is clarity. We are going to cut through all of this data overload to pull out the most practical, the most memorable insights, the high-impact takeaways you need to feel truly well-informed.
Okay, so we're focusing on three crucial, and they are wildly different areas. First, we're starting with the digital dilemma.
Right. The alarming future of the human brain as it tries to navigate this constant stream of notifications, and then how a nation like India is building a national identity defense system against threats like deepfakes.
Then second, we're moving into the city. We're going to look at the fundamental financial collapse facing our municipalities. You've called it municipal misery.
That's right. And then we'll look at the massive strategic infrastructure projects. Things like dams and hydrogen hubs, which are really designed to power national growth.
And finally, we're turning our attention to the Earth itself. We'll be looking at some astonishing new facts about our planet's natural systems.
Things like a growing weak spot in our magnetic shield. And then we'll touch on how we're preserving cultural history, both physically and virtually.
That is a lot to cover. Okay, let's unpack this. So let's kick off with something that I think we all experience every single day. The constant search for quick rewards, the next notification, that endless algorithm-driven scroll. We use this term digital dependency.
Right.
But this isn't just about, bad habits. There is actual neurochemistry at play here, isn't there? What is the fundamental mechanism that's driving this?
The core mechanism is dopamine. But we really need to move past that simple feel-good chemical label. It's a bit of a misnomer.
Oh.
Dopamine is a crucial neurotransmitter. It's responsible for transmitting signals between nerve cells, and its primary function isn't really pleasure, it's actually motivation and anticipation.
Motivation. So it's the thing that makes us do things.
Precisely. It drives us to seek out resources that are essential for survival. Things like food, achieving goals, social praise. It's the seeking chemical.
So when a digital platform gives us a notification, it's not the notification itself that feels good, but it's the anticipation of whatever that reward might be.
Exactly right. That anticipation activates this really ancient brain circuitry. It's known as the mesolimbic reward pathway.
Okay, that's a mouthful. The mesolimbic reward pathway.
It is. But just think of it as a highway running from deep in the midbrain, an area called the VTA, to another part called the nucleus accumbens. The whole system is just designed to motivate effort, to make us work for things.
And digital content just short circuits that.
It's a hyper-efficient way to deliver massive amounts of dopamine, yeah. Digital content is engineered for maximal engagement, and it provides these instant, high-frequency, low-effort hits of dopamine. It's a hack for that ancient system.
So if that high-frequency stimulation just continues indefinitely,
yeah.
What's the biological consequence for our decision-making, for our emotional health?
The modern risk and a good memory hook here is the digital habit loop is really twofold.
Okay.
Firstly, these continuous high-intensity dopamine triggers can actually desensitize the reward receptors in your brain. It's a form of tolerance.
So you need more and more stimulation just to feel.
Right. You do, just to get back to baseline. And secondly, and this is perhaps the more alarming part, this prolonged stimulation reduces our ability to handle delayed gratification. It leads to a severe reduction in impulse control.
And when you take away the phone or the tablet.
When you remove the stimulus, the brain experiences a real deficit. And that manifests as anxiety. It's a genuine withdrawal.
We saw some genuinely surprising statistics in the source material that confirm this.
They're powerful metrics, and they really help us understand this societal strain. Pew Research in 2024 noted that 63% of adults report feeling anxiety when they're separated from their phones.
63%. That's a massive majority of the population.
It is. It shows a clear sign of digital withdrawal. This is no longer just anecdotal evidence, you know. It's a measurable physiological response to disrupting that high dopamine environment we've created.
And if that's what's happening to adults whose brains are fully formed, the vulnerability must be even greater for younger people, for teens, where the brain is still, under construction.
Absolutely. And then this is a major exam hook for anyone studying societal trends. The American Psychological Association reported in 2023 that adolescents face far, far greater risks.
Why is that? What's the mechanism?
Well, it's due to a critical phase of brain development called neuroplasticity and, their inherent emotional immaturity. And the finding was that teens using social media for over 3 hours a day had a 60% higher rate of depression.
60% higher.
Yeah.
That is a dramatic, almost unbelievable indicator. Why is the adolescent brain specifically so vulnerable here?
It really comes down to the prefrontal cortex. That's the area responsible for all our executive functions like impulse control and long-term planning. And in teenagers, it's still maturing. It's not fully online yet.
Okay.
So when that highly sensitive adolescent reward pathway gets constantly overloaded with these digital hits, it just overrides the developing prefrontal cortex. The reward system wins out over the control system.
And the result of that is?
The result is an inability to regulate mood and attention. And it's setting up these young people for long-term challenges with focus, with emotional stability. It's a profound rewiring of an entire generation's operating system.
That's structural vulnerability, the inability to focus or control impulses. That's what makes us easy targets. It feels like this moves the discussion from just personal neurobiology right into the realm of national cybersecurity.
It does.
Because if the individual is so easily hacked by notifications and these manufactured rewards, then the state has to build a digital defense system that's so robust that these individual vulnerabilities don't lead to a systemic national failure.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Which brings us directly to India's massive digital infrastructure. I'm thinking particularly about Aadhaar, which is the world's largest biometric identity system. How is India securing this kind of infrastructure against next-gen threats like deepfakes and advanced spoofing?
The security effort is really focused on collaboration and preemptive innovation. And it's being channeled through the UIDAIs. That's the Unique Identification Authority of India. Their Scheme for Innovation and Technology Association with Aadhaar, or for short, CITA.
CITA, so what is it exactly?
CITA is essentially an open source collaboration program. It's a framework that links startups, academia, and private industry to co-develop cutting-edge indigenous technologies.
So it's an ecosystem approach. You're not just buying a solution off the shelf.
Exactly. It's about building the capacity at home. And the overall aim is crystal clear: to fortify the entire digital identity ecosystem against sophisticated spoofing, deepfakes, and all forms of biometric fraud.
And this ties into a larger national vision, I'd imagine.
It's a foundational pillar of the Atmanirbhar Bharat vision. That means self-reliant India. The idea is that India must not rely on external, potentially vulnerable technology for its core identity stack. It has to own the security layer.
Okay, let's break down the 3 key innovation challenges under CITA. The sources were quite specific about these. These are the technical details that really matter for the learner, right?
Yeah.
They define the immediate battlefield of digital security.
Absolutely. The first challenge targets facial fraud, and it's called face liveness detection.
Liveness detection. What does that mean in practice?
Well, think about the rise of hyper-realistic digital masks or high-resolution video injection attacks. CITA is tasking innovators to develop advanced AI-driven software development kits, SDKs, that are capable of distinguishing between a live human face presenting for authentication
And the fake?
and a sophisticated spoof, whether that's a photo, a video replay, or even a 3D printed molded mask.
That seems technically incredibly complex. Why is liveness detection so much harder than just simple facial matching?
It's a great question. Simple matching confirms that the image is the registered person. It matches the photo on file. Liveness detection confirms that the source of that image is a biological, present human being right now.
So it's checking for signs of life.
That's it. It involves checking for minute details like skin texture, subsurface blood flow, pupil dilation, or even subtle micromovements that are invisible to the naked eye. It's a constant arms race against increasingly sophisticated presentation attacks.
Okay, and that leads directly to the second key challenge from the sources, which was presentation attack detection, or PAD.
Right. PAD is the broader framework. This involves AI and machine learning-based tools that are designed for real-time detection of any fake biometric input across all modalities.
Not just faces.
Not just faces. So if someone tries to use a prosthetic finger made of silicone, a synthetic iris on a contact lens, or a deepfake voice, pad technology has to be able to spot that the input is a manufactured substitute rather than the genuine biological feature.
And that must require a huge amount of computing power.
It does. Extremely high computational processing power right at the point of authentication. It has to be fast and it has to be accurate.
And the final piece of the CITA puzzle addresses accessibility and cost.
Yes. The third challenge is contactless fingerprint authentication. UIDI needs SDKs that can allow secure and accurate fingerprint recognition using commonly available low-cost devices.
Like a standard smartphone.
Exactly, like the phone in your pocket. This expands Aadhaar's utility massively. It makes highly secure transactions possible in remote areas for people who don't have specialized hardware, while ensuring the security layer isn't compromised by the simplicity of the device.
It's a paradox, really, solving for mass accessibility and extreme security at the same time.
That's the core challenge CITA is designed to solve.
Okay, so let's move from identity authentication to content governance. Let's talk about the critical update to the regulatory framework around online content under the information technology rules.
Right, we're referring to the Information Technology Intermediary Guidelines and Digital Media Ethics Code Amendment Rules 2025. It's a bit of a mouthful.
The IT rules, let's call them.
The IT rules. And this amendment introduces a very, very significant change regarding who and at what level of seniority can order the removal of online content.
What is that specific administrative shift?
Effective November 1st, 2025, the power to order the removal of online content is restricted to only very senior officials, specifically those at the rank of Joint Secretary or the Director General of Police, the DGP.
Now, on the surface, this sounds like a purely administrative tweak. But why is this mandate so crucial for digital governance, especially in the context of deepfakes and viral misinformation that we've been talking about?
It's entirely about accountability, transparency, and the proportionality of state action. In the past, takedown orders might have originated from, lower administrative levels, often lacking the full context or maybe even proper judicial review.
So it could be misused.
It could be. So by elevating the decision to the Joint Secretary rank or the DGP, the mandate ensures two things. First, you get enhanced transparency and due process because higher-ranking officials are subject to much greater public and political scrutiny.
And
Second, it acts as a check on the potential misuse of these takedown powers. It's designed to guarantee that content moderation orders are lawful, proportionate, and politically vetted before they are issued. It raises the bar for censorship.
And how does this directly address the deepfake threat we just discussed?
The rules are aligned with the need to manage synthetic media. They promote the mandatory labeling and identification of deepfakes and other AI-generated content. So by forcing intermediaries to adopt better labeling standards and by requiring high-level oversight for takedowns, the government is attempting to stabilize the information environment.
So it makes it harder for misleading content to spread without consequence.
Or without some kind of authoritative counteraction, yes.
So we see this foundational struggle playing out. On one hand, you're trying to fortify the individual's digital identity through these technical solutions like CITA, while at the same time you're creating clear, accountable governance layers for content control via these revised IT rules.
It's a two-pronged approach to a very complex problem.
Okay, now, let's leave the digital battlefield for a moment and step firmly into the physical world. Specifically, let's talk about the growth engines of the nation, our cities. We need to confront this crucial topic of municipal misery. The source material reveals a really staggering paradox. It says Indian cities contribute nearly 2/3 of the national GDP, yet they control less than 1% of the total tax revenue generated. How can the economic engine of the country be so fundamentally broke?
The central problem is not a lack of economic activity, not at all. It's an extreme structural failure in fiscal design. And that failure is characterized by over-centralization.
Meaning the power is held at the state or central level.
Exactly. Municipalities, or urban local bodies, ULDs, are financially dependent on discretionary grants that are handed down by the state and central governments. They lack the autonomy to generate sufficient internal revenue to match the vast, complex functions they're expected to perform.
And this structural failure is perfectly encapsulated by the memory hook you highlighted earlier, the 3 Fs: funds, functions, functionaries. Let's use this framework to really understand this governance failure.
The 3F's framework is a great way to dissect why city governance struggles so much. So first, cities lack adequate funds. That means financial autonomy and reliable tax bases of their own.
Okay.
Second, they often lack clear, mandated functions. The responsibilities they have, things like water, sanitation, and planning, are often vague or they're shared inefficiently with parallel state agencies. So no one is truly accountable.
Right, so you get overlapping jurisdictions.
All the time.
Yeah.
And critically, third, they lack empowered, skilled functionaries. That means they don't have staffing autonomy, they lack capacity building, and they can't offer competitive pay scales to attract top talent.
And when all three of those are deficient?
When all three are deficient, the ULB becomes what you could call a constitutionally legitimate but functionally impotent administrative shell. It exists on paper, but it can't deliver.
The great irony here, as the sources noted, is that this was never supposed to happen. Over 2 decades ago, the 74th Constitutional Amendment was enacted specifically to fix this problem by mandating the devolution of power.
Yes, and the sources really compel us to critically analyze why the 74th Amendment failed to achieve true devolution. The amendment provided the constitutional framework. It listed the 18 functions that municipalities should perform, but it left the actual act of transferring the funds and the power up to the state legislatures.
So the states retain control. How did they undermine the spirit of the amendment?
They undermined it primarily through fiscal means. State governments often delayed or frankly manipulated the reports of the state finance commissions.
And those commissions are the ones responsible for recommending how revenues should be shared.
They are. So by controlling that process, the states kept control of the money. Furthermore, they retained control over key revenue generators, like property tax assessment and collection, or they simply refused to empower cities to implement new, more lucrative taxes.
So the ULBs remain petitioners, basically, rather than financially independent entities.
That's the perfect description. It's constitutional legitimacy coupled with functional and fiscal inertia.
And that level of structural failure is precisely why the central government is now pushing for these radical new funding mechanisms. What are the concrete financial money hooks that India is pursuing to finally try and make ULBs self-reliant?
The solutions are really focused on empowering cities to tap into the value they themselves generate, rather than just waiting for state grants. And the first major mechanism is something called value capture financing, or VCF.
Okay, explain VCF in detail. How does a city actually capture value?
VCF is a pretty sophisticated approach to monetizing development. It involves mechanisms that are designed to tap the land value appreciation that is directly caused by a major public infrastructure project.
For example, a new metro line.
A new metro line is the classic example, or a large ring road. Since that public investment causes the surrounding private land to skyrocket in value, the city uses tools like betterment levies, which is a one-time tax on that appreciated land value, or transferable development rights to capture a share of that increase.
And that captured value then funds the project itself.
It self-funds the project. It creates a sustainable, virtuous loop.
That sounds incredibly sensible. I mean, monetizing the benefits of development.
Yeah.
VCF is notorious for political pushback, isn't it?
Right.
Isn't the sources warn that it often disproportionately affects landowners or just gets stalled by local politics?
That's a critical point, yes. VCF requires immense political will and very robust legal frameworks to succeed. In theory, it's perfect. In practice, landowners resist the levies, and valuation is incredibly complex and often disputed.
So what's the way forward?
The push now is toward standardizing the legal approach across the country to ensure implementation is more uniform and predictable. But you're right, if VCF can't be implemented effectively, the city will always have to rely on handouts.
What's the second, more immediate, market-driven mechanism?
That would be municipal bonds. These are financial instruments that allow ULBs to raise capital directly from the capital market. They borrow from investors.
Which is essential for financing large-scale infrastructure outside of that slow grant cycle.
Exactly. And the source material specifically cites the successes of cities like Indore and Vadodara as examples of using municipal bonds to fund their own development and, just as importantly, prove their fiscal discipline to the market.
But issuing a bond requires a credit rating. And for financially struggling cities, that must be a huge hurdle.
It absolutely is. The municipal bond market is entirely contingent on fiscal transparency and financial health. A city needs a strong credit rating to attract investors, and most Indian ULBs still struggle with just basic accounting and transparency.
So what's the reform needed there?
The key reform here is twofold. First, enhance the financial capacity of ULBs so they can achieve investment-grade ratings. And second, streamline the regulatory approval process to make issuing bonds faster and more frequent. Bonds really turn cities from supplicants into accountable market players.
And beyond the financing, the sources said that planning itself needs a radical strategic overhaul. It has to move beyond simply telling people where they can build, which is just land use control.
Correct. Urban planning has to evolve into a comprehensive economic, social, and environmental strategy. This requires a few integrated steps. First, integrating economic and spatial planning.
Making sure the city layout actually supports economic growth.
Yes, ensuring that city layouts and infrastructure decisions directly support regional, industrial, and service growth targets. Planning has to become an economic accelerator, not just a bureaucratic constraint.
And crucially, integrating climate resilience into all of this.
Yes. Adopting climate-resilient frameworks is mandatory now. It's not an option. This means embedding disaster preparedness, energy efficiency standards, and promoting low-carbon mobility like prioritizing dedicated corridors for public transit and non-motorized transport into every single planning blueprint.
So the goal is to build cities that are not just growing, but are resilient against environmental shocks.
That's the long-term vision. And to get there, you have to grant greater fiscal and functional autonomy to the ULBs so they can implement these integrated economic and climate-resilient plans efficiently.
Okay, so moving from the challenges of local municipal funds, let's pivot to massive strategic national infrastructure, the kind of thing that drives national security and energy independence. Let's start with a high-interest, geopolitically significant project, the Sawalkote Hydro Project.
The Sawalkote hydroelectric project has just received a fresh environmental clearance, which confirms its strategic importance. It's located on the Chenab River, which is one of the 3 western rivers governed by the Indus Waters Treaty, or IWT.
And this is in the Ramban district of Jammu and Kashmir. That's right.
What are the physical and technical specifics? What's the generation capacity here?
So it's a run-of-the-river project. This means it harnesses the natural flow and the gravitational drop of the river with minimal storage capacity.
So it's not building a vast reservoir to hold back massive amounts of water.
Exactly. Its total planned installed capacity is substantial, 1,856 megawatts, and that's split into Stage 1, which is 1,406 megawatts, and Stage 2, which is 450.
And the structure itself?
The structure itself is a 192.5-meter-high concrete gravity dam, and it's engineered to generate approximately 8,000 million units of power annually. It's a huge project.
Now, the reclearance date, 2025, that's what provides the significant geopolitical context here, isn't it?
It absolutely is. The source highlights that this reclearance was granted after India took the decisive step of suspending the Indus Waters Treaty in April 2025. This move is fundamentally shifting India's policy toward maximizing the utilization of its rights over the western rivers, the Jhelum, the Chenab, and the Indus.
So how does suspending the IWT relate to accelerating projects like Sawalkote? Well, the IWT allowed India non-consumptive use, like hydropower generation, on the western rivers. But it often subjected these projects to protracted negotiation and potential objection from Pakistan, which stalled development for years, sometimes decades.
Right.
By accelerating these strategic projects post-suspension, India is asserting its right to utilize these resources efficiently for energy generation, for securing its base load power needs, and it's signaling a renewed commitment to harnessing the full potential of these river systems.
And the fact that it is a run-of-the-river project is key here.
It's very key, because it adheres to the technical constraints of non-consumptive use. The focus is on power generation, not on large-scale water storage or control.
That feeds directly into India's massive push for energy independence through clean sources. And nothing really defines that push right now, quite like the National Green Hydrogen Mission. Let's talk about the specific ports that have been designated as green hydrogen hubs.
This initiative is absolutely crucial for future industrial policy. Green hydrogen hubs are highly integrated clusters. They're designed to manage the entire hydrogen value chain.
So from production to use.
Everything. Production, which is done via electrolysis, powered by renewables, then storage, transport, and finally utilization, which is often as green ammonia.
And the strategic aim here is immense.
It is. It's about establishing India as a global leader in hydrogen technology, significantly reducing carbon emissions in those hard-to-abate sectors like steel, cement, and shipping, and positioning these coastal hubs for mass export.
This is about creating a global supply chain, Where are these three crucial geographic hooks located, and what's the strategic rationale behind each one?
India has designated 3 key ports under the National Green Hydrogen Mission, the NGHM, and they're strategically placed to cover the entire coastline.
Okay, let's start with the west.
First, on the western coast, we have the Deen Dayal Port Authority in Gujarat. This region has massive potential for solar and wind power generation. Its strategic focus is on export-linked hydrogen value chains.
Why export-linked?
It's leveraging its proximity to major international shipping routes to the Middle East and Europe. It will be the primary hub for positioning India as a global supplier of green hydrogen and green ammonia.
No. Moving south.
That brings us to the VO Chidambaram Port Authority in Tamil Nadu. This is designated as the southern hub, and its strategy involves integrating its rapidly growing renewable energy capacity, particularly from coastal wind farms, directly into the hydrogen production process.
And who is the end user there?
This hub is focused on supplying hydrogen to the industrial clusters and petrochemical centers located in the southern states. It's more about domestic industrial supply.
And finally, the Eastern Gateway.
The third hub is the Paradip Port Authority in Odisha. Now, this port will focus primarily on industrial decarbonization. Odisha has significant heavy industries, steel and cement manufacturing, which are incredibly difficult to decarbonize.
Right, they need immense heat.
They do. So Paradip will serve as the hub for supplying green hydrogen to these internal industrial users. And simultaneously, it will focus on decarbonizing coastal shipping operations by providing green ammonia bunkering services.
So by focusing on these three geographic hubs, west for export, south for industrial supply, and east for those hard-to-abate sectors, India is building this robust distributed infrastructure.
That's right. And it's all underpinned by new financial instruments like VCF for urban development and strategic baseload power projects like Sawalkote. It's a multi-layered strategy.
Okay, our journey now takes us from strategic infrastructure to fundamental earth science. And we're starting with a phenomenon that feels like it's been ripped from a sci-fi novel, the South Atlantic Anomaly, or SAA. What is this anomaly, and why is it currently a subject of concern for space agencies and governments?
The South Atlantic Anomaly is quite literally a massive weak spot in Earth's protective magnetic field. It's our planetary shield.
A weak spot.
Yes, it's a zone situated over South America and the southern Atlantic Ocean where the magnetic field intensity is significantly lower than the global average. And this weakness allows high levels of solar and cosmic radiation to penetrate much closer to the Earth's surface.
A magnetic weak spot sounds dramatic, and the source material indicated it's growing.
It is dynamic. The European Space Agency's SWARM mission recently revealed that the SAA has expanded by nearly 0.9% just since 2014.
Wow.
And to understand this, we need to quickly look at the planet's internal dynamics. The magnetic field is generated deep beneath the surface by the churning liquid iron in the Earth's outer core. The SAA is thought to be linked to large, complex fluid motions within that core, which are causing the field lines to diverge and weaken in that specific region.
So you could think of the SAA as a growing pinhole in the planet's protective invisibility cloak. What are the practical implications of a weakening field in that area, especially for all our digital infrastructure in space?
This is a critical aha moment fact because it connects physics directly to geopolitics. The SAA is a known hazard for low Earth orbit satellites. That includes telecommunications, navigation, and of course, military surveillance satellites.
And what happens when they pass through it?
When satellites pass through the SAA, they are bombarded by these energetic particles. This drastically increases the risk of something called single event upsets, or SEs.
What's that?
It's where the radiation can flip a binary state in the satellite's memory. A 1 becomes a 0, or a 0 becomes a 1. This can cause data corruption, or in severe cases, trigger a system malfunction or a complete failure.
So satellite operators have to take precautions.
They do. They often have to power down non-essential components when their satellites are transiting the SAA just to mitigate the risk.
It's a real reminder that our global connectivity relies on a healthy, active, magnetic core. The sources also place the SAA in a broader context of forces shaping the planet.
Yes. The SAA is one observable manifestation of the dynamic forces that govern our Earth. And our sources remind us that the physical world is constantly being shaped by electromagnetic radiation, by the intense heat and movement of geothermal energy, by the gravitational force exerted by celestial bodies. plate movements driven by the mantle, and of course, the planet's rotation and revolution.
And these systems are all interacting constantly.
All the time. And the SAA shows us that their effects are immediate and measurable on human technology.
Okay, sticking with global phenomena, let's move from magnetic fields to maritime quality. I'm talking about the International Blue Flag Beaches Initiative. The sources mentioned a significant win for coastal conservation and tourism standards in India.
This is a major achievement, yes, and it demonstrates a real environmental commitment. 5 beaches in Maharashtra recently received the prestigious International Blue Flag certification.
Which brings India's total to
18 certified Blue Flag beaches in total now. And the Blue Flag is really the gold standard. It's a global eco-label awarded by the Foundation for Environmental Education, or FEE, which is headquartered in Denmark.
So what makes this certification so difficult to achieve? It's not just about having clean sand, is it?
Oh, far from it. The certification demands compliance across 33 rigorous criteria, and these span 4 main categories: environmental education, water quality, environmental management, and safety and services.
Let's get into some of those specifics.
Sure. To give you some depth, for water quality, the mandatory criteria include top-grade water testing at a very high frequency and specific control measures against plastic and oil pollution. For environmental management, beaches have to demonstrate strict biodiversity management plans to protect local habitats.
So it's about the entire ecosystem.
The entire ecosystem. Responsible management of coastal vegetation, highly efficient waste management systems, and crucially, safety and accessibility.
Right. What does that entail?
The standards for safety and services are non-negotiable. This means you must have mandatory, well-trained, and certified lifeguards on duty during operating hours. You need easily accessible first aid facilities and comprehensive emergency plans in place.
And accessibility.
Exactly. The beaches must meet high standards for accessibility, ensuring that facilities like restrooms and pathways are inclusive for all visitors, including persons with disabilities. It's a very holistic standard.
And the new additions from Maharashtra are Shrivardhan, Nagaon, Parnika, Guhagar, and Ladgar.
That's them.
That is a comprehensive standard. It really proves a real commitment to sustainable tourism. However, when we look at India's natural world heritage sites, the assessment from the IUCN Outlook 2025 report suggests a much more mixed and, frankly, a much more troubling picture regarding conservation status.
That report is a necessary reality check. The IUCN Outlook analyzed 7 of India's natural world heritage sites. Only one Kanchenjunga National Park in Sikkim is rated as good.
Only one.
Only one. While many are rated as good with some concerns, 3 critical sites are currently under significant concern, which demands immediate intervention.
Which 3 sites are facing these high-level threats, and what is specifically driving the degradation?
The first is the Western Ghats, which is one of the world's major biodiversity hotspots. It is facing a significant loss of its evergreen forest cover, estimated at a 5% reduction.
And what's causing that?
The threats are driven by intense anthropogenic pressure, so accelerated, unplanned urbanization along its fringes, uncontrolled and sometimes excessive tourism, and large linear infrastructure projects that fragment the landscape and cut off vital ecological corridors for wildlife.
Okay, what's the second site?
Second is Manas National Park in Assam. It's struggling with habitat degradation that's compounded by human conflict. This includes persistent, organized poaching, severe recurring flood damage that reshapes and degrades the ecosystems, and the proliferation of invasive species that choke out the native vegetation that's crucial for its unique megafauna.
And the third, the most iconic one, the Sundarbans.
The Sundarbans National Park in West Bengal, the largest contiguous mangrove forest in the world, is under critical threat from systemic planetary issues. It faces significant danger from climate change, which is manifesting as rapid sea level rise, increased coastal erosion, and dangerous salinity intrusion.
Which harms the fragile estuarine ecology.
It does. And on top of all that, there is increasing, poorly regulated tourism pressure on the most sensitive zones.
The IUCN report also highlighted a stark shift in the nature of the primary global threat to Asian sites.
Yes, this is a profound finding. The IUCN Outlook 2025 states that globally, for Asian sites, climate change has definitively replaced hunting as the most widespread threat.
That's a huge shift.
It is. It indicates that conservation efforts must fundamentally shift resources and focus, away from just localized anti-poaching and enforcement activities and toward large-scale adaptive management strategies that are designed to cope with this systemic environmental destabilization.
That is a stark transition in focus. let's conclude our deep dive with two high-interest items concerning history, language, and cultural preservation. Let's start with the constitutional recognition of the Dogri language.
Dogri gained constitutional recognition in 2003, which marked a crucial milestone for linguistic diversity and preservation in India. It's a language with deep literary and historical roots. It's a descendant of Sanskrit, and it evolved through the Old and Middle Indo-Aryan linguistic phases.
And its history is tied directly to governance and regional power, which is a fascinating detail for the learner.
It absolutely is. Dogri was once the official court language and script of the Dogra princely state in the region. This was particularly true under the reign of Maharaja Ranbir Singh between 1857 and 1885.
And it had its own script.
It did. At that time, it was written in a unique regional script known as Dogra Akar. It was later largely replaced by the more widely used Devanagari script in the 20th century. So this constitutional recognition today ensures the survival, the promotion, and the academic inclusion of this unique linguistic heritage.
Finally, let's discuss an innovative attempt to use digital technology to address historical wrongs in cultural heritage. UNESCO's Virtual Museum of Stolen Cultural Objects.
This is a landmark initiative. It was launched at the Mondia Cult 2025 conference, and it's the world's first of its kind global digital museum. It's designed specifically to display, document, and trace artifacts that have been stolen, illicitly trafficked, or displaced throughout history.
So it can't physically return the artifacts, which I know can take decades of diplomatic negotiation, but it immediately provides a digital platform for restitution and memory.
Precisely. Its core function is to act as a virtual platform for education, documentation, and heritage protection. It symbolically reunites nations with their displaced artifacts by restoring their visibility and their context.
What are its main goals?
Its aims are crucial. 1, to combat illicit trafficking by providing centralized provenance data. 2, to digitally reconnect communities with their lost heritage. And 3, to strengthen ethical museum practices globally by shining a bright light on displacement.
Does the museum feature any prominent artifacts specifically from India?
Yes, the museum includes a deeply poignant representation from India, which symbolizes the vast scale of colonial-era looting. It features 2 9th-century sandstone sculptures.
What are they?
One is a Nataraja figure and the other is a Brahma figure. They were originally from the Mahadev temple at Pali in Chhattisgarh. They were stolen during the colonial period, and now, through this digital platform, their history, high-resolution imagery, and their provenance data are globally accessible, which will aid future restitution efforts.
This entire deep dive has taken us from the chemical reward system in our own brains to the structural failure and subsequent financial overhaul of city governance to the physics of Earth's protective shield, and finally to the digital preservation of ancient history. It really showcases the incredible interconnected breadth of knowledge you need to understand the modern world.
That synthesis is the key takeaway for you, the learner. We've seen how digital dependencies are fundamentally reshaping our psychology, and that's forcing governments to constantly innovate in cybersecurity through initiatives like CITA and in information control via the IT rules.
That's the same.
At the same time, our urban centers are facing this deep crisis of autonomy, which India is trying to solve by radically overhauling funding mechanisms like VCF and committing to futuristic, clean infrastructure like green hydrogen hubs.
Here's where it gets really interesting for you, the learner. Think about the physical world we just discussed. We talked about the South Atlantic anomaly, that weak spot in our planetary magnetic shield that is growing. It's expanding by nearly 0.9% since 2014. That magnetic field is the ultimate physical defense layer. It protects every satellite, every GPS signal, and every telecom network that underpins our entire global digital operation.
If the forces that govern our physical planet, the churning of the liquid iron core, the stability of the magnetosphere, if those forces are changing and weakening in predictable ways, how fundamentally does that threaten the resilience and the long-term security of the interconnected digital infrastructure we spent the first part of our conversation on?
It forces us to ask, what is the ultimate intersection of quantum physics and geopolitics when the atmosphere itself is threatened? The resilience of our digital future is intrinsically physically linked to the stability of our planet. That's a complex relationship worth mulling over.
Indeed. Understanding the vulnerability of the SIA means understanding the vulnerability of the entire digital economy that we've built in low Earth orbit.
That's a wrap on this deep dive. We'll talk to you next time. Welcome back to the Deep Dive, the high-intensity knowledge session where we take a complex stack of sources. We're talking neuroscience, health policy, global strategy, and distill it down into pure, potent, and instantly recallable insight tailored just for you.
Our mission today is pretty ambitious. It requires some serious synthesis. We're tackling two challenges that seem really disparate on the surface, but are, fundamentally critical for India and the modern world.
Right.
On one hand, we're doing a kind of biological self-assessment. We're looking at the digital rewiring of our brains and this urgent need to standardize emergency medical response. And then on the other hand, we're zooming way out.
All the way out.
All the way out to dissect India's geopolitical maneuvering. We'll be looking at how it's leveraging technology, connectivity, and these strategic partnerships to really assert its policy of multi-alignment in, well, an increasingly multipolar world.
That is an immense scope. Like, from the neural pathways of instant gratification all the way to the shipping lanes of the Arabian Sea. We have to make sure every key fact, every insight, and every, surprising data point from the sources becomes really embedded knowledge for our listener.
Precisely. We need to structure this deep dive around two core themes, and I think they're both about resilience, both institutional and personal. So first, how do we fix the critical deficiencies, both in our personal biology and in our national health infrastructure?
Right.
And then second, how is India translating this idea of strategic autonomy into actual operational reality through technology in these big logistics corridors?
Okay, let's unpack this, and let's start with what feels like the most intimate of modern crises. The biological price we're all paying for being constantly plugged in. The sources call it the dopamine overdose. So that we hear this term, dopamine, thrown around constantly. It's always the feel-good chemical. But the sources you provided make it really clear that this is a drastic oversimplification. It kind of minimizes its real role in driving our behavior and motivation.
That simplistic view is not just misleading, it's dangerous. Dopamine isn't just about pleasure. It's fundamentally about prediction and motivation. It's a critical neurotransmitter. Yes, it governs pleasure, but also motivation, learning, even movement.
So what's its main job then?
Its primary job is to signal the difference between what you expect as a reward and the reward you actually get. It's called the prediction error. So when an outcome is better than you expected, boom, a pulse of dopamine is released, and that reinforces the behavior that led you to that outcome.
And this whole signaling mechanism, it takes place through one of the brain's most ancient pathways, right?
Exactly. We're talking about the mesolimbic reward pathway. It starts deep in the brain in the ventral tegmental area, and it projects to the nucleus accumbens, which is kind of the brain's pleasure center.
And historically, this was all about survival.
Right. This pathway evolved to motivate us for behaviors that were critical for our survival, seeking food, finding water, ensuring safety, all things that required, a lot of effort and a lot of time.
Which is where the digital world performs this masterful, if maybe insidious hack. It's completely replaced the hard work needed for a real, delayed reward like, say, mastering a skill or building a meaningful relationship with these instant low-effort hits from our phones.
That is the absolute core of the modern crisis. The constant stream of notifications, likes, that endless scrolling loop, the short videos, it provides a near-continuous low-effort and, this is the key, a highly variable reinforcement schedule.
Variable, so it's the not knowing that gets you hooked.
Exactly. The variability, not knowing when the next little hit will come, is what makes this digital environment so addictive. It far surpasses the natural rewards that our brains evolved for over millennia.
And the consequence of this prolonged chronic exposure to all that digital stimuli, is a very clear erosion of our self-control. Reduced impulse control becomes inevitable when the brain learns that any delay in gratification is just unnecessary because a reward is literally just one swipe away.
And that leads directly to heightened anxiety the moment that digital connection is interrupted. We have some really striking data on this, and it frames this not as a mild annoyance, but as a genuine crisis of dependency. The Pew Research finding from 2024, it noted that a massive 63% of adults report anxiety when they're separated from their phones.
63%. That statistic is really sobering. I mean, that's well over half the adult population showing a clinical symptom that's associated with digital withdrawal. It really indicates that our baseline state of neural expectation has been completely warped.
It speaks to the normalization of addiction, really. Silence or, unstructured time. Those moments that are so necessary for deep thinking and emotional regulation, they're now perceived as these distressful voids that have to be filled.
And the most critical vulnerability here lies with young people.
Absolutely. The sources really emphasize that adolescents face far greater risks. And it's because of the inherent neuroplasticity of their developing brains.
Their prefrontal cortex, which is the seat of executive function planning, impulse control, all that important stuff, it's still under construction. So if you bombard that developing system with high-frequency, low-effort rewards, you're essentially setting up a neurochemical baseline that just demands instant satisfaction. You're sabotaging the development of crucial long-term coping skills.
And the real-world outcomes are devastating. The American Psychological Association back in 2023 documented a staggering 60% higher rate of depression among teenagers who use social media for over 3 hours a day.
60% higher. That's not a correlation. That's a direct, quantifiable link between chronic screen use and severe mood disorders.
It is.
So the real aha moment here is recognizing that, a reduced attention span and this heightened anxiety aren't just some cultural quirks of the digital age. They are biological consequences of a chronic neurochemical imbalance, a systemic overload of that mesolimbic pathway, leading to a generation that's really struggling with emotional and motivational regulation.
Exactly. And the path forward, it requires more than just personal willpower. It needs a societal realization that we need better principles of, let's call it, digital environment design. We need to move toward systems that reward effort and delayed gratification instead of just passive consumption.
Because the very ability to focus and maintain motivation, which defines success in the complex real world, is literally being undermined by the architecture of the attention economy.
That's it.
Okay, that discussion shows a really clear gap in our personal biological resilience. So let's pivot from that to the gaps in our national physical resilience. The state of emergency care in India. The sources cite a highly unfortunate but impactful event, the stampede in Karur, Tamil Nadu, as the trigger that really renewed this national debate.
That tragedy, it reignited a crucial discussion, and it moved the focus away from just improving services to actually treating emergency medical care as a core constitutional duty that guarantees the right to life.
Which puts the onus squarely on the state.
It does. It puts the onus squarely on the state to provide immediate, standardized care as, a prerequisite for upholding that fundamental right.
So to understand the goal here, we really have to look at the global standard. This field of emergency care has evolved so dramatically. It traces its roots all the way back to military trauma management triage, rapid evacuation, stabilization on the battlefield.
And the modern evolution really shifted with the rise of comprehensive emergency medical systems. It expanded from just simple transport to on-site stabilization by highly trained paramedics. And this structured, integrated approach, it led to the establishment of these global temporal benchmarks that define how effective a system is.
And those benchmarks are incredibly specific. We always talk about the golden hour, that first 60 minutes after a serious injury, where getting timely intervention can dramatically improve the outcome.
But for acute, really time-sensitive trauma, that 60 minutes is often way too long. Modern medicine now emphasizes what's called the platinum 10 minutes.
The platinum 10.
The platinum 10 minutes. It underscores that for things like a cardiac event, a stroke, or severe trauma, the first 10 minutes of response time are the absolute ultimate determinant of survival and long-term outcome. The faster you get stabilization and transport, the lower the morbidity and mortality. It's that simple.
So how does India, with its, complex geography and incredible population density, how does it perform against this Platinum 10 ideal? Where do the critical infrastructure gaps lie?
Well, the primary deficiency noted in the sources is the lack of a standardized golden hour response system for trauma care across the entire country. It's just not there. The system is fragmented, it varies widely from state to state, and it lacks a uniform operational protocol and a consistent infrastructure base.
That said, I think it's important we acknowledge the scale of the existing commitment. The 108 Ambulance Service, which is a public-private partnership under the National Health Mission, is massive.
Oh, it's a phenomenal logistical undertaking. The service runs over 10,000 ambulances and serves a staggering 7 to 9 million patients annually.
7 to 9 million.
Every single year. So this demonstrates that the capacity is there, but the challenge remains achieving consistent speed and, that crucial standardization across all regions.
And we can point to some regional success stories that prove this benchmark is actually achievable. Tamil Nadu, for example, is remarkably close to that Platinum 10 ideal. They're reporting an average response time of 10 minutes and 14 seconds.
10 minutes, 14 seconds. That's incredible.
It provides a proven, scalable model that other large states could, in theory, emulate.
And critically, the legal framework is starting to catch up. The Motor Vehicles Amendment Act from 2019, it provides essential support by mandating the right-of-way for ambulances and introducing penalties for anyone who obstructs them.
Which tries to address the behavioral and traffic management chaos that can often just negate the speed advantage of having a modern ambulance in the first place.
Exactly.
So moving forward seems to require a leap from these pockets of regional success to a real national standardization. The sources detail several necessary high-level policy reforms.
Yeah.
What are the key systemic recommendations here?
The foundational recommendation, the big one, is the establishment of a National Emergency Services Regulatory Authority.
A single national
Yeah.
body.
Yes. If emergency care is a constitutional duty, it just can't be run haphazardly. This authority would enforce standardization across training, equipment, operational protocols, importantly, interstate coordination. It would move us beyond the current system of, disparate state-level control.
Standardization is foundational, of course, but it feels like technology is what really allows you to shrink those minutes down to seconds.
Absolutely. The second recommendation is deep technology integration. We're talking about using AI-based dispatch systems for predictive and optimized route planning. We're talking mandatory GPS tracking for real-time fleet management and implementing real-time data sharing between the ambulance service and the receiving hospitals.
So the hospital knows you're coming.
Right. This preparation ensures that the trauma teams are mobilized the moment the ambulance is dispatched. That shaves off critical minutes that are usually wasted in the hospital waiting area.
Now, one of the more, let's say, futuristic solutions mentioned is expanding the reach into remote areas and also for high-stakes logistics, like organ transport.
Yeah.
The sources propose using aerial assets.
Right. The recommendation is to introduce air and drone ambulances. This is for remote access and for specialized organ transport logistics. India has a rapidly advancing drone technology sector, and leveraging this for medical delivery, bypassing road infrastructure entirely, is seen as essential for achieving true national coverage, especially in geographically challenging regions.
That sounds incredibly promising, but let me challenge that for just a moment. Given the immense regulatory hurdles for airspace management in India, I mean, especially for drones and non-scheduled aircraft, and the substantial cost of maintenance, isn't this more of a long-term, maybe low-priority policy aspiration compared to, say, just funding and equipping 5,000 more ground-based, nationally certified paramedics?
That's a great question, and it strikes right at the heart of the capacity issue. You are right, the regulatory environment is very complex. However, the proposal frames air and drone transport as a complementary specialization. It's essential for these low-density but high-value tasks, like organ delivery, where a 2-hour delay on the road is just catastrophic.
So it's not meant to replace the ground fleet?
No, not at all. It's not meant to replace the ground ambulance network, but rather to optimize the logistics for very specific, time-critical missions. It signals a move toward a multimodal emergency response system.
That distinction is important. Okay, finally, let's go back to the human element. Investing in all this advanced technology and these regulatory authorities is, well, it's moot if the workforce isn't up to the standard.
Correct. The fourth essential reform is to professionalize the workforce. This requires implementing national certification standards and ensuring pay parity for paramedics and emergency medical technicians.
Which would address retention, I imagine.
It would address massive retention issues, it elevates skill levels, and it transforms the role from, a temporary job into a highly respected, certified medical profession, which is commensurate with the constitutional duty they're upholding.
It's a powerful parallel when you think about it. The challenge is fundamentally about speed and standardization. We need to standardize our own neurological response by slowing down that dopamine loop, and at the same time, we need to standardize our national physical response by accelerating and integrating the emergency medical system to hit that platinum 10-minute window.
And the same technological forces that contribute to the digital addiction crisis optimization, tracking, rapid delivery, are paradoxically the only way to solve the physical infrastructure crisis. The key is applying that technology not for passive consumption, but for institutional efficiency.
So if technology is the necessary answer to shrinking the goals an hour domestically, let's explore now how India is leveraging technology and deep connectivity to shrink strategic distances globally. We're shifting now from domestic institutional resilience to external strategic positioning.
And this is where India's foreign policy, which is often defined by this term strategic autonomy, really comes into focus. What we're seeing in the sources is the operational execution of what's better called multi-alignment.
Multi-alignment, explain that.
It's about forging deep, focused relationships with different powers on different vectors. So, technology with one, defense with another, logistics with a third, without becoming subservient to any single one. The focus is on what the sources call operational deepening with key partners.
Okay, so let's start with the UK.
Yeah.
This is clearly a relationship that's moving beyond historical ties toward a very future-focused technology partnership.
Yeah.
And this is exemplified by the India-UK Connectivity and Innovation Center, or the CIC.
The CIC is a huge marker. It aligns directly with the comprehensive India-UK 2035 vision document. And it's not just some advisory body. It's a full-on bilateral research platform dedicated to the joint development of next-generation telecom technologies.
And the investment behind it, that's a sign of a long-term commitment. A joint funding of £24 million, which is approximately 282 crore rupees over 4 years. That level of financial commitment signals industrial-level strategic R&D collaboration. They're focused on shaping the market.
And their focus areas are highly targeted. They reflect very specific strategic needs. The first area is the deployment of AI in telecom for complex network optimization, for fault prediction, for smart service delivery, all of which is essential for managing what is the world's fastest-growing digital infrastructure.
And the second area seems to address the vast geographical challenge that India faces, just pure reach.
That's where non-terrestrial networks, or NTNs, come in. This technology, which includes things like low Earth orbit satellites, LEO satellites, and high-altitude platform stations, or APS, is crucial for rural Indian connectivity.
Because traditional fiber is just too expensive.
Exactly. Traditional fiber optics are prohibitively expensive and logistically a nightmare to lay across massive rural distances. NTNs just bypass this challenge entirely. They use the sky to deliver robust, high-speed connectivity, which is vital for digital inclusion and, of course, economic growth.
And the third area is the foundation for pretty much all modern strategic infrastructure, security.
Precisely. They're focusing very heavily on telecom cybersecurity. This collaboration ensures that the joint infrastructure they develop is secure, that it adheres to open standards, and that it's interoperable globally. This gives both nations a really powerful position in shaping the future of things like 6G systems. This isn't just R&D, it's a form of technical diplomacy aimed at setting global standards.
Okay, now let's pivot from the UK to Australia. Here, the focus shifts a bit from pure technology R&D to defense and industrial capacity. The core drivers for this convergence are pretty obvious. Shared democratic ideals and the absolute necessity of balancing China's growing assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific.
This relationship is significant because it has moved so far beyond just dialogue. It's moved into genuine operational deepening. We see this through joint military exercises like Talisman Sabre, through the establishment of logistics pacts for mutual support, and crucially, through industrial cooperation like joint ship repair and maintenance.
What does joint ship repair actually look like on the ground, and why is that so significant for strategic stability in the region?
Well, functionally, it means that Australian naval vessels can dock in Indian shipyards for maintenance and repair, and vice versa. Strategically, this reduces the logistic tail that's necessary to project power across the Indian Ocean region. It anchors stability by building these autonomous bilateral capabilities for sustained operations.
So they don't have to rely on anyone else.
Exactly. India brings its cost-efficient, high-volume manufacturing strength, while Australia contributes its advanced defense technology and maintenance expertise. Together, they're creating a resilient maritime security partnership that doesn't rely solely on legacy allies.
This strategy of multi-alignment, it really requires simultaneous action on the logistical front, which brings us to West Asia and the geopolitical importance of these new corridors.
And the strategic value of the Chabahar port in Iran is a textbook example of geoeconomics defining geopolitics. It was developed jointly by India and Iran, and its primary function is to bypass Pakistan. It gives India direct, reliable sea-land access to Afghanistan and crucial Central Asian markets, both for trade and for humanitarian aid.
So it's a key node, not just for Afghanistan access, but for a much larger sort of pan-continental corridor.
Absolutely. Chabahar acts as a vital entry point for the International North-South Transport Corridor, the INSTC. This is a massive 7,200-kilometer multimodal network connecting India with Russia, Central Asia, and Europe, all through Iran. It bypasses the traditional Suez Canal route and can reduce transit time by up to 40%.
40%.
It's India's attempt to completely rewire Eurasian logistics.
And the diplomatic footnote here is just massive. India was granted a crucial U.S. sanctions waiver specifically for operating the port. Why on earth would the U.S. grant that waiver, given its incredibly strict sanctions regime on Iran? Was it purely about humanitarian aid, or were there deeper strategic calculations at play?
The source material strongly suggests a very pragmatic calculation by the U.S. While yes, humanitarian aid for Afghanistan was the initial stated reason, the underlying strategic reality is that Chabahar's existence stabilizes the region by providing a reliable, non-Chinese controlled trade and aid route.
So it's a counterweight.
It's a counterweight. Allowing India to anchor its influence through a viable corridor serves a long-term American interest in regional stability and diversification, even if it means working around their own Iran sanctions. It demonstrates that strategic interests can sometimes trump ideological alignment.
And this regional dynamic is complicated even further by the mention of the Pasni port context in Pakistan. This port is situated, roughly 300 kilometers from Chabahar, and it's also very close to the China-backed Gwadar port.
Right. Pasni is currently being proposed as a strategic mineral export terminal, so an economic function. But its geographical location is incredibly sensitive. The sources suggest its development could potentially give the U.S. a strategic foothold, positioning a Western-aligned asset right next to the rival Gwadar, which is the heart of the China-Pakistan economic corridor, and the Indian-linked Chabahar.
So its location creates a new axis of tension, a crucial maritime triangle in the Arabian Sea.
Precisely. You have Chabahar, representing Indian influence, Gwadar, representing Chinese influence, and then potentially Pasni, representing Western or U.S. influence. For India, this introduces a huge amount of complexity regarding maritime surveillance, intelligence dynamics on its western seaboard, and just the basic security of its vital shipping lanes. This logistics triangle is now a nexus of great power competition, and it demands very careful, balanced engagement, which is the very essence of multi-alignment.
And India isn't just conducting these bilateral deals, it's increasingly asserting itself within multilateral bodies, leveraging its domestic technological strengths onto the world stage.
This is really visible through India's recent election as co-chair of the United Nations Global Geospatial Information Management for Asia and the Pacific, UNGGIM-AP. And that's for the 2025 to 2028 term. This is not just a ceremonial role.
Why is co-chairing this particular body so important for India's strategic outlook? What is geospatial policy, really?
Geospatial policy is it's the management and standardization of location-based data mapping and information systems. It is foundational to all modern governance, infrastructure, and defense. So by co-chairing UNGGIM-AP, India moves from being a recipient of global policy to actively shaping global geospatial standards and data ecosystems.
And given India's massive domestic digital mapping initiatives, this must reflect a kind of determined technical diplomacy.
It does. It's aimed at influencing international data sovereignty and cooperation frameworks.
And this commitment to global stewardship and digital reach, it also extends to cultural heritage, which is the soft power aspect of diplomacy. The sources discuss a new UNESCO initiative.
Yes, the launch of the Virtual Museum of Stolen Cultural Objects. It premiered at the Mondia Cult 2025 conference. And its mission is twofold: to combat illicit trafficking and to use digital means to reconnect communities with their lost heritage.
A digital museum that is essentially asserting historical claims. What specific Indian artifacts are featured in this global platform?
The inclusion confirms the significance of the endeavor. 2 9th-century sandstone sculptures from the Mahadev Temple in Pali in Chhattisgarh. These figures, a Nataraja and a Brahma, were stolen during the colonial era. So the platform isn't just about documentation, it's a powerful tool for cultural reconnection, digitally asserting the heritage claims of the source nation and building global awareness about illicit trafficking. It's a subtle but very potent use of soft power and digital technology.
And finally, as we reflect on these global institutions, the sources note the impending celebration of the United Nations 80th anniversary. That's on October 24, 2025, commemorating the entry into force of the UN Charter back in 1945.
80 years of multilateralism, it's a powerful historical marker. It reminds us that while nations like India pursue multi-alignment for their own national interest, the stability that enables that strategy is still underwritten by these complex and sometimes frustrating multilateral institutions.
All right, now we move into the crucial third section. We need to integrate the high-density recall facts from your sources into a conversational flow, ensuring our listener understands not just the facts themselves, but their immediate relevance. Let's start with the dynamic forces shaping our planet, which gives us the context for a really interesting geophysical anomaly.
Right. To understand the Earth's complex changes, the sources identified 6 fundamental dynamic forces that operate on its surface. And we need to categorize these. They include internal mechanisms like geothermal energy and plate movements. Then there are external celestial mechanics like gravitational force, the rotation of the Earth, and the revolution of the Earth. And finally, solar inputs like electromagnetic radiation.
And these forces are constant, but their interactions are always changing.
Always.
And that change leads us to one of the most intriguing updates in the source material regarding our planet's magnetic shield, the South Atlantic Anomaly, or the SAA. We need to explain clearly what this is and why its change matters.
The SAA is a large region of significantly weak magnetic field intensity. It's situated over South America and the southern Atlantic Ocean. You can think of it as a dent in our protective magnetic bubble, the magnetosphere, which shields us from solar and cosmic radiation.
And why is this weakness a concern?
Well, the weakness allows energetic charged particles from space-like solar energetic particles to penetrate much deeper into the atmosphere than they normally would. For anything operating within that region, this is dangerous. Specifically, the SAA is notorious for causing what are called single-event upsets, or SEUs, in orbiting spacecraft and satellites.
Single-event upsets.
Yeah, these are random errors, data corruption, or even forced system reboots that are caused by a single high-energy particle hitting a microchip.
And the recent finding from the European Space Agency's SWARM mission highlights that this problem is actually getting worse.
Correct. The data shows that since 2014, the SAA has demonstrably expanded by nearly 0.9%. This expansion suggests there are ongoing, very complex fluid dynamics happening within the Earth's core, which is what generates the magnetic field.
So an expanding SAA means a wider zone of risk for satellites.
A wider zone of risk for all low Earth orbit satellites, yes. It requires enhanced shielding and operational adjustments for any missions that fly over that region.
Okay, moving from the deep Earth up into the atmosphere, let's solidify the specific scientific definition of a blizzard. It's not enough to just say a lot of snow. It's a very specific convergence of factors.
A blizzard is a severe mid-latitude snowstorm that's defined by 3 objective meteorological criteria. First, strong winds must be at or above 56 kilometers per hour. Second, low temperatures must prevail. And third, the crucial visibility criteria. Visibility must drop to near zero, specifically below 0.4 kilometers for a period exceeding 3 hours because of blowing snow.
So all 3 have to be met.
All 3. These specific thresholds are necessary for standardization and for communicating the extreme danger of whiteout conditions.
Turning now to environmental health, which ties back to the national health infrastructure challenges we discussed earlier, the sources confirm 2 persistent and dangerous pollutants found in drinking water in parts of India.
Those would be arsenic and fluoride. Arsenic contamination often stems from geological sources, and it gets mobilized by unsustainable groundwater extraction, which leads to very serious chronic illnesses. Fluoride, while it occurs naturally, is also found in dangerously high concentrations in many regions, causing severe skeletal and dental fluorosis.
So these geographically specific pollutants add yet another layer of complexity to the national public health crisis that needs localized, not just national infrastructure solutions.
Exactly.
We also have a list of native species that need to be firmly established for recall.
Right. The sources confirm the following animals as naturally found in India: the star tortoise, the monitor lizard, and the pygmy hog. The pygmy hog is particularly noteworthy from a conservation perspective. It's critically endangered, and it's confined to only a few isolated pockets of tall grassland in Assam.
Which makes it a critical barometer of the health of that specific habitat.
It does.
Okay, let's discuss the threat landscape for conservation, specifically at India's Natural World Heritage Sites. This is based on the IUCN Outlook 2025. This summary is crucial for understanding current conservation priorities.
The Outlook paints a complex picture. 3 of India's natural sites were classified under significant concern: the Western Ghats, Manas National Park, and the Sundarbans National Park. And the threats range from urbanization and habitat fragmentation in the Western Ghats to intense climate change impacts like sea level rise and extreme weathering in the Sundarbans.
And what's the most significant shift in the threats noted across Asian sites in general?
This is a major change. The Outlook confirmed that climate change has now replaced hunting as the most widespread threat to Asian World Heritage Sites. It's followed by tourism infrastructure and invasive species.
Which must mandate a fundamental shift in conservation funding and strategy.
It has to. It means moving resources from just patrol intensity to long-term climate adaptation planning.
On a more positive note regarding environmental standards and coastal tourism, India continues to expand its list of internationally recognized clean beaches.
Indeed. 5 new beaches in Maharashtra achieved the prestigious Blue Flag certification from the Foundation for Environmental Education in Denmark. These new additions are Shrivardhan, Nagaon, Purnaka, Guhagar, and Ladgar. That brings India's total number of Blue Flag certified beaches to 18.
Which is a testament to meeting really stringent standards for environmental management, water quality, and public safety.
It is.
Finally, let's wrap up our recall with 2 key historical nuggets that link ancient infrastructure and philosophy. First, the rock-cut caves.
Right. The sources confirm the historical context of the Barabar rock-cut caves. They were originally made for the Ajivikas by Emperor Chandragupta Maurya during the Mauryan Empire. This is a foundational piece of architectural and philosophical history. It highlights the early patronage of these heterodox, non-Vedic philosophical schools like the Ajivikas, who were contemporaries of early Buddhism and Jainism.
And connecting back to our discussion of logistics and corridors in Part 2, there's a fascinating archaeological finding about the Harappan civilization's trade infrastructure.
Yes, the significance of the site of Kottadabadli in Kutch, Gujarat. Researchers identified this mature Harappan period site, dating from 2300 to 1900 BCE, as the earliest known caravanserai.
This isn't just an old structure. It fundamentally rewrites our understanding of the scale and organization of Harappan trade.
It absolutely does. A caravanserai is a fortified, standardized stopover point. It's designed to support long-distance trade, offering shelter and resources for traders, their goods, their pack animals. Finding this indicates that the Harappan civilization possessed remarkably well-organized, standardized, and protected logistics routes.
So sophisticated infrastructure wasn't just limited to their massive urban centers like Mohenjo-Daro. It extended deep into their resource and trade corridors.
Exactly. It shows that logistics and efficiency were foundational to their statecraft, just as they are to India's multi-alignment strategy today.
We have covered an immense amount of ground in this deep dive. We started with the neural crisis of the dopamine overdose and the necessity of national standardization for the platinum 10 minutes in emergency care. We then connected that need for institutional efficiency directly to India's global strategy.
We saw multi-alignment in action, securing high-tech R&D with the UK through the CIC, deepening defense logistics with Australia through operational pacts, and masterfully managing that geopolitical logistics triangle in the Arabian Sea involving Chabahar, Uadar, and Pasni. The foundation of global influence today is, well, it's irrevocably built on technology and efficient infrastructure.
And this brings us right back to the domestic challenge we saw noted in your source material, one that fundamentally constrains all of India's external strategic goals. India's domestic logistics costs remain stubbornly high, around 14 to 16% of the value of goods. That's compared to global competitors like China at 8% and the U.S. at 6 to 8%.
That internal inefficiency is a massive anchor on the global economic competitiveness that Chabahar and the UK tech deals are meant to enhance.
And this leads us to our final provocative thought for you to consider as you integrate this deep dive. If connectivity corridors like Chabahar and technology agreements like the India-UK CIC are meant to strategically boost India's global trade and influence profile, how critical is the unresolved domestic challenge of high logistics costs to the actual ground-level success of India's multi-alignment foreign policy objectives? Can India truly achieve strategic global reach without first conquering internal economic efficiency?
Think about that tension between external ambition and internal capacity as you process this deep dive. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission here is simple. We take your stack of source material, all the policy notes, the economic research, those high-level proposals, and we really distill it.
We turn it into the essential knowledge you need to be, immediately fluent in some of these really complex topics.
And today, we're undertaking I think, a really critical deep dive. This is basically the blueprint for India's economic future.
It is. We're pulling directly from material that's focused on foundational economic development and policy. I mean, this is core GS Paper 3 stuff. Our sources cover, well, everything, from why certain Nobel Prize-winning theories matter right now, all the way to the technical specs for deep-sea mining.
And the thing is, we're not just going to list facts for you. We're extracting the mechanisms. Our mission today is focused on 3 areas that are completely interconnected and absolutely critical.
Okay, so first,
the theoretical and the financial architecture that you need to fuel sustained high-level growth. So we're talking innovation theory, but also that near instantaneous financial plumbing.
Got it. Second, the massive, and let's be honest, costly but totally non-negotiable pivot towards industrial decarbonization and self-reliance clean power.
Exactly. And third, the targeted strategic policy updates that are driving agricultural resilience. We're going to look specifically at procurement and high-value exports.
So we want you to understand not just what policy is being implemented, but really why it's being implemented. What are the structural long-term implications? We're going to dig deep into why speeding up a financial transaction by 2 days actually matters.
Or how India plans to power the AI revolution and what 100% MSP assurance for a pulse crop, what that actually looks like on the ground.
All right, let's get into it. Let's start with the theoretical engines of growth.
Okay, let's unpack this first section. It's so crucial. We're talking about the foundational ideas that structure economic progress. You hear this term all the time, the middle income trap. If India wants to avoid that gravitational pull, that place where a country gets stuck between, say, $1,000 and $12,000 per capita income.
And just stalls out before becoming a developed nation.
Exactly. It needs a map. And sometimes that map comes directly from the highest levels of economic science.
It does. And our sources frame this perfectly. They reference the concepts that were recognized by the 2025 economics Nobel laureates, Joel Mokyr, Philip Aghion, and Peter Howitt. Their work isn't just, abstract academia. It provides the operational blueprint. It's how you transition a huge, complex economy like India's into a high-income developed nation. They really define what we're calling the innovation imperative.
So let's start with Joel Mokyr's insight. It's this concept of useful knowledge. It sounds so straightforward, but this is where the mechanism gets really interesting for anyone making policy. How does he break it down?
Well, Mokyr argues that sustained modern economic growth doesn't just happen by accident. It requires this ongoing, highly effective, virtuous feedback loop between two very distinct types of knowledge. First, you have what he calls propositional knowledge. This is the theoretical understanding, the fundamental why. The laws of physics, pure mathematics, basic chemistry. Think of it as the scientific foundation.
And then you have to have the practical side, the how to actually do it.
That is prescriptive knowledge. This is the practical application, the techniques, the skilled artisanship, the engineering know-how. It's the ability of a skilled technician or an engineer to translate that theory into a functioning product or a process or a machine.
So if the propositional knowledge is, say, the discovery of quantum theory,
right,
the prescriptive knowledge is the engineer who figures out how to build the first reliable quantum computer. Is that right?
That's a perfect analogy. And Mokyr's critical insight is that if you just invest in one without the other, you get stagnation.
Yeah.
So for India specifically, you have to create policy mechanisms that institutionalize that sustained feedback loop.
A loop where the theoretical science is quickly shared and translated into applied tech and skills.
And where the challenges the technicians face on the ground actually feed new questions back to the scientists. It has to flow both ways.
And this ties directly back to policy goals, like leveraging the demographic dividend. I mean, this framework shows that development needs massive investment, not just in basic research, but critically in technical education,
right,
in the workforce's ability to absorb and apply new skills.
Absolutely. If you don't nurture that prescriptive knowledge alongside the theoretical breakthroughs, that massive youth bulge, well, it becomes a liability, not an asset.
That is the core linkage. It connects directly to the challenge of the Lewis turning point.
Which is that point where a developing economy essentially runs out of its surplus rural labor, and then you start to see wages accelerate.
So if India hits that point without having upskilled its labor force into those high productivity, high wage sectors, the ones powered by these Mokyr-style knowledge flows,
then the risk of getting stuck in that middle income trap goes way up. Innovation driven by this dual knowledge system is really the only viable escape route.
Okay, so moving from the ingredients, which is knowledge, to the actual process of growth. This brings us to Aghion and Howitt's work, the theory of creative destruction.
Right. Their contribution was to formally model how sustained growth actually works in a dynamic capitalist economy. It's this process where innovation is constantly replacing older, less efficient technologies, processes, and products.
So the creation is the new high productivity company or industry.
And the destruction is that simultaneous and often really painful obsolescence, the death of the older industries that just can't compete anymore.
It sounds like necessary economic violence in a way. You have to close the inefficient factory to open the efficient one. But politically, socially, Managing that destruction part must be incredibly hard, especially in a country focused on creating jobs.
And that's the entire policy challenge, isn't it? Aguillon and Howitt show that you must allow the destruction part to happen. If you don't, you trap capital, talent, and energy in low productivity sectors. You basically condemn the whole economy to slow growth.
But a responsible government can't just let mass unemployment happen. So what does the policy to manage that destruction look like? What kind of mechanisms are we talking about?
Well, India needs to invest heavily in what economists call social safety nets and reallocation mechanisms. So that means strong, accessible retraining programs, which, links right back to Moker's prescriptive knowledge.
Right.
You have to ensure that workers who are displaced from, say, a traditional textile mill are immediately retrained in something like logistics analytics or digital manufacturing. It also means creating financial incentives for firms to pivot to making higher value-added goods.
So it's the difference between managing the process proactively through skill development versus just reacting to unemployment crises when they happen.
Exactly. Proactive versus reactive.
That really sets the stage for the scale of economic activity that's required. But for investment and trade to support that kind of scale, money has to move at, near light speed. So let's pivot from the academic theory to the ground-level financial architecture. Specifically, this massive shift happening at Gift City with the new foreign currency settlement system, or FCSS.
This is a huge leap in financial modernization. It's designed to elevate the GIFT International Financial Services Center, the IFSC, into a truly competitive global hub, something that can actually match places like Dubai or Singapore.
And the FCSS itself.
It's a new real-time payment and settlement mechanism, specifically for foreign currency transactions that are conducted by banks and other entities operating inside GIFT IFSC.
We really need to spend a moment explaining why a 4 to 5 second settlement time is so revolutionary. What was the old archaic system that this thing replaced?
It replaced the incredibly complex and frankly risk-prone correspondent banking model. Just imagine trying to send money from a bank in Mumbai to a counterpart in London.
Okay.
In the old system, that money had to take multiple international layovers. It might go through a New York bank's account, then maybe a bank in Frankfurt, and then finally get to London.
And those layovers are the Nostra account chains, right?
Exactly. A Nostra account is just an account that a bank holds in a foreign currency at another foreign bank. And in the old model, even foreign currency deals between two entities inside Gift City still had to rely on this chain of messages and funds passing through these external multi-leg Nostro accounts held by international banks abroad.
Wow. And what were the structural problems with that system? I mean, beyond just being expensive.
The issues were immense. You had time zone delays, which meant settlement often couldn't complete until the major global financial centers were open. That's where you get that 36 to 48 hour, that full 2-day lag.
And multiple points of failure, I'd imagine.
So many. If any one of those correspondent banks in the chain had a regulatory issue or a liquidity problem, the entire transaction was at risk of failing. And crucially, there was a high settlement risk, sometimes called Herstat risk, where one side of a currency exchange might fail before the other side was completed.
And the FCSS just bypasses this entire cumbersome offshore journey.
Completely. Under the FCSS, interbank foreign currency transfers are settled locally within GIFT IFSC. It's operated by CCIL IFSC Ltd. The transactions are netted and settled in real time or near real time.
So you go from 2 days
down to an astonishing 4 to 5 seconds.
That's the magnitude of the impact. In high-frequency, high-value finance, that speed reduction just drastically cuts counterparty risk. It frees up massive amounts of capital that was locked up, which enhances liquidity. This is the kind of infrastructure that signals real global intent.
It absolutely is. It ensures the IFSC aligns with global standards for risk management, which boosts its credibility and makes it a much more attractive place for international capital that's looking for reliable, fast execution.
So to ground this in some foundational economic definitions, our sources also revisit the core components of the balance of payments, starting with the capital account. Can you just list the key components as they're defined in the material?
Sure. The capital account, it records transactions that change a country's assets or liabilities. And the core components listed are foreign loans, foreign direct investment, or FDI, and portfolio investment.
And it's important to keep that distinction tight. The source material mentioned private remittances in a list for consideration, and that's obviously a massive inflow for India.
It's huge, but the nuance is critical. While remittances are massive financial flows, they're classified under the current account, specifically as unilateral transfers.
So they represent money sent back by migrant workers, but they don't create a future liability or asset for the nation in the same way.
Exactly, not like a foreign loan or an equity investment does. The capital account focuses strictly on those asset and liability creating flows.
Okay, so we've established the theoretical need for innovation and the financial requirement for speed. Now let's look at the biggest physical and human constraint holding the economy back: logistics and the skill gap that comes with it. To fully benefit from that demographic dividend, the source explicitly mandates a focus on promoting skill development.
And the logistics challenge is, you could argue, the most pervasive tax on India's competitiveness. The sources give us some hard, really startling data that shows why this has to be fixed, and fixed urgently if that dividend is going to pay off.
Let's talk about that cost.
Right now, India's logistics costs are alarmingly high. They're hovering between 14% and 16% of GDP, and that's as of 2024. This cost includes everything: warehousing, inventory, transport, documentation, all of it.
And the comparison to global competitors is where the pain point just becomes so obvious.
It's dramatic. China operates with logistics costs around 8% of GDP. The US is generally between 6% and 8%. So this means, on average, Indian goods carry this built-in logistics premium of, what, 6% to 10% compared to international rivals.
That difference directly undermines the goal of becoming a global manufacturing power. It just eliminates your profit margins before the product even leaves the port. What specifically drives that high cost?
Well, it's not just poor road quality, though that is a factor. The cost is driven by multimodal inefficiency. You've got the high cost of first-mile and last-mile connectivity, congested ports, and this excessive reliance on road transport instead of cheaper rail or coastal shipping.
And the sources also point to a skill deficit.
Critically, yes. Bureaucratic friction, inefficient inventory management. A lot of this stems from a skill deficit.
So this skill gap ties directly into the high cost. We're not talking about truck drivers. We're talking about a lack of talent in digital systems, aren't we?
Yes. The system is desperately lacking highly skilled people in modern data-driven areas, things like digital supply chain management, advanced automation, logistics analytics. These are the high-end skills that reduce inventory holding times, that optimize routes using AI, that manage complex just-in-time supply chains.
Without that talent, efficiency stays low, and that 14 to 16% drag just continues.
It does.
So the policy response has to be twofold: physical infrastructure fixes and human capital investment. I mean, the massive PM Gati Shakti project, that has to be seen as the government's strategic countermeasure to this exact problem, right?
Absolutely. PM Gati Shakti is the central mechanism trying to coordinate all the various ministries, railways, ports, roads, to overcome this fragmented, high-cost environment. It's about eliminating those departmental silos and making sure that every new road or rail project serves the broader goal of reducing that 14–16% burden.
So that the high school workers coming out of the demographic dividend actually have efficient physical systems to manage.
Exactly. The success of the dividend relies on solving this logistics equation.
Okay, let's transition now into the core of industrial policy, infrastructure, and that massive challenge of decarbonization. This is really where India's growth goals meet global climate commitments.
It is. This whole section is about pivoting the industrial base toward a cleaner, high-tech, and more self-reliant future.
And this industrial pivot is absolutely essential. I mean, you look at global regulations like the EU's proposed CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, and it's a direct threat.
It threatens market access for any carbon-intensive products. If India doesn't clean up its key heavy industries, especially steel and cement, it really risks losing critical export markets entirely.
So the primary solution that's proposed in our sources for decarbonizing these heavy industries is developing green hydrogen hubs. Let's just nail down the core objective here. What sectors are we trying to save, and why is hydrogen the answer?
The specific objective is to cut carbon emissions in the hard-to-abate sectors. These are industries like steel, cement, and shipping.
Right.
Places where just using electricity or simple energy efficiency measures can't replace the need for very high heat or chemical processes that are currently powered by coal or heavy oil.
So hydrogen, specifically green hydrogen made with renewable energy, is the solution because it can replace those fossil fuels, and the only byproduct is water vapor.
Precisely. That makes it the last-mile fuel for carbon reduction in these sectors.
So how are these hubs designed structurally? How do they achieve this enormous task?
They use an integrated, cluster-based model. It's known as hydrogen valleys. These aren't just single production facilities, they're comprehensive ecosystems.
So they strategically co-locate everything you need.
Everything. Large-scale renewable power like solar and wind, electrolysis facilities to produce the hydrogen, the industrial sites that will consume it, logistics infrastructure to move it, and dedicated R&D facilities, which are often called Hydrogen Valley Innovation Clusters, or HVICs.
This sounds incredibly strategic, very geographically focused. It suggests the choice of where to put them is critical for export potential.
Oh, absolutely. The strategy has a very strong export orientation. Given India's huge coastline and renewable energy potential, the goal is to position these coastal hubs as major global suppliers.
So they become export gateways for green hydrogen and its derivative, green ammonia, which is easier to ship.
Exactly. It transforms a climate mitigation project into a massive economic opportunity.
Okay, so which specific ports has the government recognized as the 3 foundational anchors for this whole mission?
We have 3, and they're geographically distinct. On the western coast, you have the Deen Dayal Port Authority in Gujarat, which will leverage that dense industrial base. It's slated to focus heavily on export-linked value chains, serving the Middle East and Europe.
And the other 2 cover the south and the east.
Yes. In the south, you have the VO Chidambaram Port Authority in Tamil Nadu. It will leverage the strong renewable energy potential and the existing industrial clusters there. And then finally, on the eastern coast, you have the Paradip Port Authority in Odisha.
Which is crucial for heavy industry and those coastal shipping links.
Exactly. It will focus on industrial use and decarbonizing maritime transport along the Eastern Economic Corridor. These 3 points really form a highly integrated national strategy.
So the industrial transition requires cleaning up the past, but it also, of course, requires powering the future. And the sheer energy appetite of the modern digital economy is creating these new layers of demand that traditional power grids just struggle with.
This is the real crux of the power challenge. Electricity demand is spiking, and it's not from legacy consumption. It's from new baseload demand layers created by what our sources are calling the intelligence revolution.
So you're talking about massive AI data centers, nationwide 5G networks, advanced digital manufacturing.
All of it. And these facilities need power that is clean, continuous, and highly resilient. They cannot tolerate the intermittency that you get with simple solar or wind.
Which brings us to a proposed key solution. Small modular reactors, or SMRs. Why are SMRs being looked at as the path to power this intelligence revolution instead of, just building giant conventional nuclear plants?
Well, SMRs offer several key advantages for this new demand profile. They're smaller, up to 300 megawatts electric. They're modular, they can be factory built, which reduces construction time and cost.
And crucially, they solve the intermittency problem.
They do. The national strategy is to integrate them, to combine renewables, SMRs, and storage systems to create these resilient digital energy ecosystems that offer clean, continuous, high-load capacity supply, 204/7. They provide the stable baseload that renewables currently lack.
So the SMRs provide the stability for the renewables to maximize their output. But deploying any nuclear technology, even small reactors, that's a massive undertaking. There are complex regulatory hurdles. What's the path forward here?
The sources outline a 2-pronged approach. First, there have to be comprehensive regulatory reforms, specifically aligning the licensing and operational frameworks with the strict IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency guidelines. That's to ensure international best practices in safety and non-proliferation.
And the second point deals with site selection, which must be a huge challenge.
It is, but the move is strategic. It's about repurposing retired coal power plants into SMR sites.
So you leverage the existing infrastructure.
You streamline the whole process, you use existing transmission lines, cooling water access, and you have a skilled power plant workforce already there. It helps manage that inevitable economic dislocation from the coal industry's decline.
It turns a destruction component into a creation opportunity. It's Agyan and Howard all over again.
It is.
So the SMRs power the AI, and the AI in turn drives massive leaps in manufacturing efficiency. Our sources also highlight the role of robotics.
Absolutely. AI-powered robotics is driving precision and productivity everywhere. We're seeing 2 distinct models being deployed. First, you have smart manufacturing.
So that's AI robots monitoring machines, predicting failures.
Exactly. They predict component failures with extreme accuracy and proactively schedule maintenance. This drastically reduces downtime and saves millions in production losses.
And the second model addresses the human element in the factory.
That's the integration of collaborative robots, or cobots. These are safety-enhanced robots designed to work right alongside human workers. They use advanced sensors to dynamically adjust their speed and operations in real time, helping with repetitive or heavy tasks. It maximizes both throughput and safety.
And finally, the policy mechanism that's designed to foster self-reliance in this high-tech space. The Electronics PLI scheme.
Right. The Electronics Production Linked Incentive Scheme. It was recently approved. It's aimed at boosting domestic manufacturing across the whole supply chain.
Yeah.
So, critical electronic components, bare components, capital equipment. The goal is twofold.
Okay.
Dramatically enhance domestic value addition, DVA, which means more of the product's value is created in India, and tightly integrate Indian electronics firms into stable global value chains, GVCs. It's about moving beyond just assembly into high-end component production.
But no ambitious industrial power can achieve self-reliance without guaranteed streamlined access to raw materials. I mean, the stuff that underpins its entire manufacturing base. And our sources highlight two critical moves in this area. One deals with simplification, the other with strategic global acquisition.
The first is the reclassification of a really critical fundamental material, limestone. Limestone is vital for, well, everything. Construction, cement, steel production, chemical processes.
And historically, there was this bureaucratic hurdle with how it was categorized, right? It depended on what you were using it for.
Precisely. It had this confusing dual classification. It was a minor mineral if you used it for building lime, but a major mineral if it was destined for industrial purposes. This end-use distinction created layers of regulatory complexity, different licenses, different royalty structures, different government oversight.
So the Ministry of Mines has now solved that by just classifying all limestone as a major mineral.
Correct. And the purpose of this move under the Mines and Minerals Act of 1957 is just to simplify regulation, eliminate those artificial distinctions, and promote ease of doing business. It provides a standardized regulatory environment which is essential for massive industries like cement and steel.
Okay, so the second strategic move. This deals with the future of green tech, the deep sea, and the hunt for high-tech metals, polymetallic sulfides, or PMS deposits.
These are future critical minerals. PMS deposits are these dense mineral concentrations. They're rich in metals like copper, zinc, lead, silver, gold, and they often contain traces of rare earth elements. They form near deep-sea hydrothermal vents.
And their significance is staggering because they're non-negotiable inputs for high-tech electronics and especially for the renewable energy ecosystem.
Solar panels, high-density batteries, advanced superconductors, all of it.
And securing these minerals reduces India's exposure to land-based supply chains, which are often concentrated in geopolitical hotspots.
Exactly. And the sources confirm India's active pursuit of these resources on the global stage. India holds the second exploration contract in the Central Indian Ridge in the Indian Ocean. This kind of aggressive international strategy is essential to secure the critical minerals you need for the electronics PLI scheme, for the EV transition, for the entire high-tech economy. It's about guaranteeing long-term strategic material access.
All right, let's move now to agriculture, the most complex policy balancing act of all. Policy here has to, sustain the rural economy, ensure national food security, comply with international trade norms, and achieve self-sufficiency.
It's a lot to juggle. And the focus has really shifted from just increasing aggregate production to achieving strategic self-sufficiency and enhancing farmer income through, efficient market access and assured price realization.
Let's spend some time on the Pulse's Self-Sufficiency Mission 2025. Pulse's lentils, beans are so vital for nutritional security, for soil health.
Nitrogen fixation, yeah.
And for reducing India's reliance on often volatile global imports.
And this is a highly ambitious 5-year mission. It's aimed at achieving complete self-sufficiency in pulses by the end of the decade, specifically by 2029-2030. The targets are technical and substantial.
What are those specific targets?
The mission is aiming for a 20% to 30% increase in crop productivity per hectare. And alongside that, there's a critical focus on reducing systemic waste. The goal is to slash those crippling post-harvest losses to below 5%.
Which are often much higher now due to poor storage and transport.
No, much higher.
Okay, a 20 to 30% productivity jump is huge. But farmers often face higher risks and lower returns for pulses compared to traditional grains like rice or wheat. So how is the mission incentivizing this big production shift?
This is where the core policy lever comes in. It's procurement assurance. The mission promises a massive incentive, 100% minimum support price, MSP procurement assurance for 4 specific pulses, and it's guaranteed over a 4-year period.
What does 100% MST assurance actually mean in operational terms? Who guarantees the price in the purchase?
It means that unlike traditional MSP mechanisms where the government only buys the surplus or where state agencies might be slow, the relevant government agencies are mandated to purchase all of the marketed surplus of these specified pulses from registered farmers.
As long as the quality meets the standards.
Right, at or above the announced MSP, it removes the market risk for the farmer.
And which specific pulses are getting this crucial 100% MSP guarantee?
The assurance is for tur, or arhar, urad, and mesur, lentil. The mission also provides input support. It's distributing large volumes of free certified seeds. The source mentions 88 lakh free seed kits as part of the initial push.
That brings us to transparency and quality control. I mean, that's essential when you're distributing inputs on that kind of scale. If you guarantee MSP, you have to ensure the seed quality is high enough to get that productivity jump.
And that's where technology integration takes center stage. The mission relies on the SAFI portal. It stands for Seed Authentication, Traceability, and Holistic Inventory.
So it's a digital portal that uses QR codes and a central database.
Exactly. To monitor the entire seed lifecycle, from the breeder all the way to the farmer's field, it ensures authenticity and tracks distribution efficiency. This reduces the risk of counterfeit seeds, undermining that 20 to 30% productivity target.
And just to understand the procurement cycle, including MSP announcements, it's fundamental to reinforce the seasonal context of Indian agriculture. Our source material revisits the major crop classifications.
Right. So we have the Kharif crops. These are the monsoon or summer crops, sown at the start of the monsoon, June, July, and harvested in autumn, September, October. The examples listed are cotton, groundnut, and rice.
And the second category, the winter crops.
The Rabi crops. They're sown around October, November, after the monsoon retreats, and harvested in the spring, March, April. The primary example in the sources is wheat, which, as you know, is often called the king of Rabi.
And knowing this seasonal cycle is what determines when the government announces its MSPs and its procurement schedules.
Precisely.
And speaking of MSP, the policy debate so often revolves around the formula used to calculate the price. The sources remind us that the CACP, the Commission for Agricultural Costs and Prices, it only recommends the MSP.
It's the CCEA, the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, that actually approves it.
And that approval process is contentious because of the formula they use.
It is. The farmer demand often centers around the Swaminathan formula, which calls for MSP to be fixed at 50% above the C2 cost, that's the comprehensive cost, including imputed rent and interest on capital.
But the government currently uses A2 plus FL.
Primarily, yes, which is the actual paid-out costs plus the imputed value of family labor. It's a less comprehensive measure, and that difference is what fuels the demand for a legal guarantee of the higher C2 plus 50% formula.
Okay, but agriculture policy isn't just about staple food security. It's also about realizing the high economic value of unique, quality Indian produce in premium global markets. And this is where geographical indication, or GI tags, become a really powerful economic tool.
A GI tag is a form of intellectual property, right? An IPR. It protects the authenticity and quality of a product that's linked to a specific geographical region, provided that region gives a unique characteristic to the product.
So it's essentially a regional brand protector. For an audience targeting global competitiveness, this is a crucial mechanism for getting premium pricing. And we have a great recent example of this strategy working.
We do. The APITA facilitated movement of high-value fruit. We saw the first ever air shipment of GI-tagged limes to the United Kingdom. This involved 2 distinct high-quality varieties, Indi lime from Karnataka and Puliyankudi lime from Tamil Nadu.
Air freighting suggests a very high-value product going to a discerning, high-paying market. What's the specific economic significance of doing that?
Well, the significance is in leveraging IPR to enhance market value. By guaranteeing the authenticity and quality of these specific limes through the GI tag, India can command premium pricing in really competitive international markets like the UK.
And that ensures the economic benefits flow directly back to the local producers.
It does. It stabilizes their income, and it incentivizes them to maintain those high-quality standards. It's a very sophisticated step towards globalizing niche agricultural products.
So finally, we have to look at the necessary policy friction that happens when massive domestic welfare goals meet global trade obligations. Our source material gave us a critical essay prompt focusing on the food security bill. forcing us to weigh that domestic necessity against the international backlash.
And this is the core tension in modern Indian agricultural policy. On one hand, the explicit aim of the Food Security Bill is, well, undeniable and ethical. It's the elimination of hunger and malnutrition in India. It's a legal guarantee of access to subsidized food for vulnerable populations.
But the policy mandates a critical discussion of the trade-offs and the implementation hurdles. So what are the major challenges on the domestic implementation side?
Domestically, the scale is the enemy. There are major apprehensions in its effective implementation. This includes leakage and diversion of the subsidized grains, corruption, errors in identifying the real beneficiaries, and just the sheer logistical challenge of distributing millions of tons of grains every month across a decentralized system without significant waste.
And then the second major area of friction is international, the concerns this huge program has generated in the WTO.
That's the concerns it has generated in the WTO, the World Trade Organization. The core issue is India's enormous food procurement and stockholding programs, which are used to supply the Food Security Bill.
Because WTO rules cap agricultural subsidies at 10% of the value of production.
Generally, yes. And critics, usually led by developed nations, argue that India's vast MSP purchases and subsidized grain releases breach those caps, that they effectively flood global markets and distort international commodity prices.
India's defense, however, is equally strong. They frame this as a non-negotiable sovereign matter.
Correct. India counters vehemently that these stocks and subsidies are essential for national food security and to protect the livelihoods of hundreds of millions of small and marginal farmers. They place human welfare and poverty alleviation goals above purely free market trade principles. And that debate, balancing necessary domestic goals against complex international trade compliance, that remains the central and most difficult challenge in the policy landscape.
This has been an incredibly detailed deep dive. We've covered the necessary technical steps for India to achieve its economic ambition. We've gone from theoretical models of innovation all the way down to the granular details of seed traceability and deep-sea mineral rights.
And if we synthesize these segments, you can see the strategic moves are highly interconnected. Sustained growth hinges on applying those Nobel-winning principles of innovation and useful knowledge to continuously upgrade the workforce and manage creative destruction.
Industry is pivoting on these ambitious integrated strategies like green hydrogen hubs and SMRs to ensure clean, continuous power for the digital revolution.
And agriculture is strategically moving toward that guaranteed MSP for pulses and leveraging GI tags to secure premium pricing in high-value export markets.
And all of this is supported by core infrastructural modernization. I mean, the speed of the FCSS at Gifty City is just as vital as simplifying mineral regulation like the limestone reclassification or strategically acquiring PMS deposits for our high-tech supply chains. It all points toward a coordinated, resilient strategy.
But before we close, here is a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over. We've established how India's economic future relies on two things: fast, efficient financial transactions like the FCSS, and reducing the cost of moving goods with the Logistics Master Plan.
However, we also know that India's energy and physical trade security relies on complex geopolitical maneuvers and really bypassing conflict zones.
And we saw the source material mention two critical geographical frictions: the development of the Chabahar port in Iran, which is vital for creating an alternative trade route to resource-rich Central Asia that completely bypasses Pakistan.
And the highly contentious Sanskrit conflict, which is a long-standing maritime boundary dispute that directly affects access to offshore oil and gas reserves.
So the question is this: how does the complex geography of conflict, that strategic dependence on developing a port in Iran despite the geopolitical risk, or the unresolved dispute over a muddy maritime boundary like Sanskrit, how does that directly dictate the ultimate success and feasibility of India's long-term economic vision, particularly its logistics goals and its energy security strategy?
It forces you to link the policy of the economy directly to the reality of the map and the geopolitics of scarcity. It's a reminder that no economic plan ever operates in a vacuum.
So continue your deep dive on those fascinating connections.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into India's complex economic trajectories. We'll be here next time with more crucial insights extracted straight from the source. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are strapping in for a high-velocity tour across India's strategic landscape. And believe me, this stack of sources we have is incredibly rich.
It really is.
We're going for the depths of the Arabian Sea, all the way up to, military communication satellites, and then drilling right down into the foundational math that's powering AI and fighting digital scams.
It's a study in extremes, really. You have the tangible, physical stuff, new satellites, parachute systems, actual borders on a map.
Right, the hardware.
Exactly. And then it's juxtaposed with these totally intangible threats, but they're almost more dangerous, right? Deepfakes, digital fraud, the vulnerabilities in our critical infrastructure.
Absolutely. So we've got a really concentrated stack of recent updates today. We're focusing heavily on India's strategic tech, some core science breakthroughs, we'll get into the Nobel Prizes, and these emerging security challenges, both digital and at the border.
And the mission today, I think, is pretty clear.
It is. We're here to pull out the most important nuggets, connect these pretty diverse fields, and show you exactly why all of this matters right now.
In terms of national defense, economic resilience, all of it.
All of it. Okay,
Yeah.
let's unpack this. I think we have to start with the massive push for strategic autonomy in defense.
Right. And we should probably begin with what is effectively the Indian Navy's new Sky Eye. We're talking about the GSAT-7R satellite.
Also known as CMS-03.
That's the one. And this is probably one of the most critical defense assets being brought online. This isn't your standard multi-purpose satellite.
Wow, is this dedicated?
Completely dedicated, a secure military communication asset, and it's been tailored from the ground up specifically for what the Indian Navy needs to do.
And its purpose really speaks volumes about the shifting priorities, doesn't it? In India's whole maritime strategy.
It does.
The fundamental driver here seems to be enhancing what's called network-centric warfare, or NCW, especially in that hugely strategic area, the Indian Ocean region, the IOR. So for anyone listening who might not be familiar, what does a dedicated satellite like this actually mean for NCW? How does it change things?
Well, NCW, it fundamentally changes how a modern naval force operates. I mean, historically, you might have different platforms.
Like a destroyer, a submarine, a patrol aircraft.
Exactly. And they'd all be operating in their own little communication silos.
Right.
NCW demands that every single asset is working off one single unified tactical picture.
Everyone sees the same thing at the same time.
At the same time, it enables complex, simultaneous operations instead of these siloed efforts. So the GSA-7R, it provides that high bandwidth, low latency, secure link that you absolutely need for that data to flow.
So it's ensuring that, say, naval headquarters on shore can talk instantly and securely with a submarine that's hundreds of meters down.
Or a surface ship that's thousands of kilometers away. It's about maintaining complete maritime domain awareness, total operational reach across that entire IOR.
And that dedicated military bandwidth is key. It's completely insulated from civilian traffic, which I imagine is non-negotiable in a conflict.
It's non-negotiable. And like you said, this isn't starting from zero.
No, there's a history here.
That's right. It speaks to a real continuity of effort. The GSAT-7R is a direct replacement and a pretty significant tech upgrade for the older GSAT-7.
Which was famously known as Rukmini.
Exactly, Rukmini. That was the Navy's first dedicated military satellite, launched, over a decade ago now?
So replacing and upgrading this shows a long-term commitment.
A huge commitment to continuous, high-availability, secure operational links. The new satellite, it offers better throughput, much better anti-jamming capabilities, a bigger coverage footprint.
All things you need when you're trying to project power over an area as vast as the Indo-Pacific.
Especially with, increasing traffic from other global powers in the region.
And this ties directly back to that idea of indigenization of defense technology. It's not just about buying a secure connection. It's about owning the entire communication stack.
The whole infrastructure that keeps the fleet running, designed and controlled right here at home.
But this push for self-reliance, it's not just happening in space. It's happening at every single altitude, right down to the individual soldier.
Exactly. So let's move from that strategic high ground of space down to precision air deployment.
Okay.
The Indigenous Military Combat Parachute System, or MCPS, this is a fantastic example of indigenous development that's aimed at, ensuring precision and survivability for elite forces.
And this is developed by the DRDO labs?
Jointly, yes, by two very specialized labs. The Aerial Delivery Research and Development Establishment, ADRDE, and the Defense Bioengineering and Electromedical Laboratory, DBEL.
And what's really fascinating here is the operational altitude.
Yeah.
I mean, this system was tested at 32,000 feet.
An incredible altitude.
Which means it's fully operational for deployment above 25,000 feet. That's the highest for any Indian-made parachute system.
It puts it squarely in that HALO and HAOCHO jump capability category. High altitude, low opening, high altitude, high opening.
The altitude is vital, for sure. But the real game changer here, the nugget of strategic autonomy, is the navigation tech.
Ah, yes. The integration of NAVIC.
Navigation with Indian constellation. India's own GPS, essentially.
This might seem like a small technical detail, but you have to think about the strategic implication. In a conflict, your access to foreign GPS systems could be instantly cut off.
Or degraded, or even spoofed by an adversary.
Right. So by integrating the parachute system directly with NAVIC, you ensure that your special forces on these critical infiltration missions, they have immediate, precise geolocation.
It gives them autonomous operational flexibility. No more dependence on foreign satellites.
Precisely. It's a critical layer of strategic sovereignty. It's not just about being accurate, it's about being resilient.
So if a foreign power decides to deny GPS access over a war zone,
The entire mission doesn't just fall apart. It guarantees a much higher success rate and, frankly, the safety of the operators involved.
so that's securing the individual soldier. Now, let's move from the sky down to the digital backbone of the forces. We should talk about the Indian radio software architecture, IRSA Standard 1.0.
Yes, this addresses one of the most persistent problems in joint military operations.
Which is getting the Army, Navy, and Air Force to all talk to each other.
Seamlessly and securely. Exactly. The IRSA 1.0, developed jointly by DRDO and the Tri-Services, is a unified software standard for all future software-defined radios, or SDRs.
And it's aimed at two things: interoperability and waveform portability.
Two vital objectives.
Okay, let's define those terms because they sound pretty central to the future of joint ops. Interoperability, I get. A Navy ship, an Army unit, an Air Force jet can all exchange data in real time.
Correct.
But what is waveform portability? What does that do for you systemically?
You can think of waveform portability as giving every military radio a kind of universal digital adapter. A waveform is basically the specific mathematical pattern used to encode and decode information. So, if the Army develops an incredibly secure anti-jamming waveform with this new standard, the Navy or the Air Force can instantly just load that same software onto their existing radios.
Regardless of who made the hardware.
Exactly. As long as it adheres to the IRSA 1.0 standard, it means you can reuse communication patterns across platforms without needing complex hardware changes or, those long procurement cycles.
It sounds fundamental for moving towards that integrated theater command structure everyone's talking about.
It is. It means the communications layer is finally unified, standardized. It removes a huge source of friction and a potential point of failure in joint operations.
And it must be forward-looking, too.
It is. Because it's a software architecture, it's inherently designed to be scalable. You can integrate next-gen tech AI, mesh networking, 5G, 6G into future systems much more easily than with legacy hardware.
So it's not just solving today's problems, it's anticipating tomorrow's.
Tomorrow's multi-domain battlefield, where data exchange has to be instantaneous and totally reliable.
But the threat landscape, especially from the air, is evolving so fast. I mean, we've seen drones dominate recent conflicts. Counter-drone tech is now an existential need.
Which brings us to the SACSM Counter Unmanned Aerial Threat Grid System, or CUAS.
Right.
The SACSM system is designed to protect key strategic assets. Think airports, bases, energy facilities, all from hostile drone swarms or even individual threats.
And its core capability is detection and neutralization.
Real-time detection and neutralization of airborne threats up to 3,000 meters. This distance covers that crucial air littoral space.
The low-altitude airspace that traditional air defense systems might miss.
The ones designed to shoot down fighter jets or missiles, yes, they often neglect that lower layer.
And the intelligence component here, that's where the real leap is, right? It's all about AI and machine learning.
That's the crux of it. The system doesn't just see a flying object. It uses integrated sensors, radar, visual, acoustic, RF, and ML algorithms to perform a really nuanced target classification.
So it's asking, is it friendly, neutral, hostile? Is it a bird or a drone?
Exactly. And that sophisticated classification allows for automated, proportional responses.
And what do those responses look like? I've heard the term soft kill versus hard kill.
Right. A soft kill might be electronic jamming, disrupting the drone's navigation, or its command link, forcing it to crash or go home. A hard kill is kinetic.
Lasers or munitions?
High-energy lasers, anti-drone munitions, yes. The AI fusion automates that decision matrix. It initiates the right response without the human delay, which can be fatal when you're dealing with high-speed swarms.
It's the ultimate convergence of applied physics and pure computation.
It is.
And that's a perfect transition because the ability to build a system like Saksham, it all hinges on these foundational scientific breakthroughs that can seem abstract but end up changing everything. So let's shift gears completely. Let's look at 2 Nobel Prizes awarded in 2025 that really underpin the future of energy and economics, starting with chemistry.
Right. The Nobel in chemistry focused on a revolutionary new class of materials.
Materials that redefine storage and separation.
We're talking about metal organic frameworks, or MOFs. The prize was awarded to Susumu Kitagawa, Richard Robson, and Omar Yaghi.
Okay, MOFs. I always find it helpful to visualize these things. What exactly is a MOF in a way that we can picture?
Imagine a microscopic 3D lattice, like a crystal made of molecular scaffolding.
Okay.
MOFs are these crystalline, ultra-porous 3D structures. They're built by linking metal ions, those are like the rigid corner posts, with organic molecules, which act as the struts linking them together.
And this creates empty space inside.
Vast empty spaces, or pores. And the structure has a staggering internal surface area. The sources mentioned you can pack the surface area of a football field into a single teaspoon of MOF powder.
Wow. And that immense porosity is what gives them their power. They can grab and hold specific molecules.
That's their superpower, yes.
So how did the 3 winners contribute? What were the breakthroughs that led to their application?
It was a logical 3-stage progression. Richard Robson, way back in the 70s, he had the initial concept. He dreamed up how you could even construct these porous networks.
So he had the blueprint.
He had the blueprint. Then, in the 90s, Susumu Kitagawa demonstrated something remarkable, that these frameworks weren't just rigid boxes. He showed they could actually breathe. They could change their size and shape in response to different gases. They'd expand to absorb molecules and then contract to hold them tight. That flexibility made them far more useful.
So Robson provided the idea. Kitagawa proved the structure was dynamic.
And then Omar Yaghi provided this scalable solution. He stabilized them using what he called reticular chemistry, basically building with chemical bricks, which allowed them to be manufactured reliably. And critically, he pioneered their practical applications.
He's the one who moved them from the lab into the real world.
Decisively, yes.
So what are the key applications that make this so relevant for, say, clean energy and environmental goals?
The primary application is precision separation and storage. Because you can design the pores to be specific sizes, MOFs act like molecular sieves. They're critical for things like capturing water from the air, which is huge for arid regions. And for our energy goals, storing greenhouse gases like CO2 or clean fuels like hydrogen and methane.
So you could use them to filter CO2 from industrial smokestacks.
With unparalleled efficiency. It sets the stage for a highly efficient, low-cost carbon capture technology, which is absolutely essential for meeting climate goals.
That's incredible. Molecular engineering literally defining the clean energy future. Now, let's look at the theoretical side of things. The Economics Nobel in 2025.
Yes, this went to Joel Mokyr, Philippe Aghion, and Peter Howitt for explaining sustained economic growth driven by, well, continuous disruptive innovation.
A classic question in economics. Mokyr's big insight was around this concept of useful knowledge.
And specifically, why the Industrial Revolution became this engine of continuous growth and not just a one-off event. He argued that sustained growth relies on combining 2 types of knowledge.
Propositional and prescriptive knowledge. Can you break that down for us?
Absolutely. Propositional knowledge is the theoretical scientific stuff, the why. Knowing the laws of thermodynamics, for example.
Okay, the science.
And prescriptive knowledge is the practical, hands-on understanding, the how. The skilled artisan who knows how to tune a machine. The engineer who knows the exact steps to build a working engine.
So Mokyr's point was that when science, the propositional, and engineering, the prescriptive, started working together in a systematic feedback loop.
As happened during the Enlightenment and the Industrial Age.
That's when growth became exponential, not just sporadic.
Exactly. He showed that scientific experimentation, combined with skilled craftsmanship, created this vital feedback loop. New science informs better tech, and new tech raises questions that drive new science.
And then Aghion and Howitt built on this.
They provided the dynamic mechanism for how this innovation translates into economic success on a macro level.
Which is the famous and often feared theory of creative destruction.
The very same. It's a concept from Schumpeter, but they mathematized it and built it into a modern economic model. Creative destruction is the process where new innovations think streaming displacing DVD rentals,
Or EVs displacing combustion engines?
displace the established older systems. The old industry is destroyed, but at the same time, economic space, capital, and labor are all freed up and redirected to the new, more productive, higher value technology.
So their theory explains why economies that embrace this disruption, rather than protecting old industries, are the ones that achieve long-term growth.
And higher living standards for their people, yes, it's the cost of progress.
Okay, so we've gone from defense tech to Nobel-winning science. We have to connect that back to what might be the most critical piece of digital infrastructure in India, Aadhaar.
Right. The security imperative around digital identity is massive, especially now, with AI-driven synthetic media and deepfakes becoming so common.
The security challenge is fundamental, isn't it? If that foundational identity layer is compromised, the whole digital public infrastructure is at risk.
Banking, taxation, government services, everything.
Which is why the UIDI launched this new scheme, CITA.
The Scheme for Innovation and Technology Association with Aadhaar. It's a vital national effort. You can think of it as a government-backed R&D incubator.
Designed to fortify the Aadhaar authentication system against these new, sophisticated digital threats.
It's a proactive defense. It recognizes that the threat vector is shifting, from physical identity theft to AI-driven spoofing.
So what specific threats is CITA designed to counter? How is it leveraging that foundational science we're talking about?
Well, the aim is twofold. First, fortify the system against biometric fraud and spoofing. Second, foster indigenous R&D in AI and cybersecurity, which fits perfectly with the Atmanirbhar Bharat vision.
So UIDI is using these innovation challenges to find solutions.
Collaborating with startups, with academia in 3 key tech areas.
Okay, let's break down those 3 challenges. They really illustrate the complexity here.
Challenge 1 is all about face liveness detection.
Because a simple camera check isn't enough anymore.
Not with high-quality deepfake video and sophisticated masks out there. The goal is to develop advanced AI-driven SDKs, software development kits, that can reliably tell if the face being presented is a real, live human.
Or a spoof using a photo, a video on a screen, or even a 3D mask.
Exactly. These systems look for micromovements, texture variations, subtle physiological cues that are basically impossible to replicate in recorded media.
Okay, so that handles visual spoofing. What about the other biometrics, like fingerprints?
That's challenge 2, presentation attack detection, or PAD. A presentation attack is when someone uses an artificial version of a biometric trait.
Like a silicone fingerprint.
A highly accurate silicone fingerprint or a printed iris scan to trick the sensor. The R&D here is targeting AI and ML tools that can detect these fake inputs in real time.
Distinguishing between a live finger and a fake one.
Which have different electrical and thermal properties, yes.
And the third area seems to be about accessibility. Making security robust but also easy to use?
Precisely. Challenge 3 is focused on contactless fingerprint authentication. The goal is to develop secure SDKs that allow for reliable fingerprint recognition using just a standard smartphone.
So you don't need a dedicated, expensive scanner.
You can extend robust security to the last mile using everyday tech. It enhances both security and accessibility. It's essentially crowdsourcing solutions to a central national security problem.
It's a recognition that defending digital identity requires constant innovation, especially when synthetic media is making spoofing so easy.
It's all about maintaining public trust in that foundational infrastructure.
And here's where it gets really interesting. We've talked about high-altitude military tech and securing digital identity, but the greatest vulnerabilities are often where we least expect them.
In the physical infrastructure that powers the economy.
Which is being rapidly digitized.
The biggest new security risk globally is this convergence of the digital world and the physical industrial world. We're talking about cyber risks to critical infrastructure.
The systems that keep the lights on, the water running.
The trains moving, yes.
And the main driver of this vulnerability is the integration of operational technology, OT, and information technology, IT. Can you just quickly clarify the difference?
Of course. IT, information technology, is what we all know. Computers, servers, email, corporate networks.
Okay.
OT, operational technology, is totally different. It's the industrial control systems, the SCADA systems, the PLCs that monitor and control physical processes.
Like opening a dam or regulating pressure in a gas pipeline.
Or controlling turbines in a power plant.
And when you connect those industrial systems to the corporate IT network, you get huge efficiency gains.
But you also create this vastly expanded, unified attack surface that just wasn't there before.
And this is happening fast.
Alarmingly fast. Global OT/IT convergence grew by 40% between 2020 and 2024 alone. And this integration is now attracting very sophisticated threat actors.
State-sponsored hackers.
Particularly, yes. They see targeting OT systems as a powerful tool for geopolitical leverage. I mean, a cyber attack on a military network is espionage. An attack on a power grid
Is an act of physical disruption that affects millions of people.
Exactly.
Is there a really stark, real-world example of the kind of damage this can do?
The sources all point to Russia's NotPetya attack in 2017. It was designed as a wiper attack on Ukrainian computers, but its impact just cascaded globally because of this IT-OT integration.
So it jumped from the IT network to the OT network.
And it ended up crippling Ukraine's power systems, its ports, its banking networks. It caused billions in damages globally. That is the blueprint for modern digital warfare.
Not just spying, but achieving physical destruction through cyber means.
Physical paralysis, yes.
That is terrifying. If the threat is so obvious, why aren't these systems better defended? What are the blind spots?
There are three major weaknesses. First, a severe lack of visibility. Shockingly, reports suggest 60% of OT networks still don't have basic intrusion detection systems.
So they're essentially flying blind.
Completely blind. They can't spot an attacker who's already inside their network.
They might know their front door is locked, but they have no idea if someone is already inside the house, moving toward the control room.
That's a perfect analogy. The second problem is legacy systems. Many of these industrial plants are running on decades-old SCADA platforms.
That were never built with cybersecurity in mind.
They lack modern features like encryption, multi-factor authentication. They're operating critical physical infrastructure using the functional equivalent of Windows 95.
That sounds like a ticking time bomb.
It is. And the third gap is the regulatory and skill gap. There's no single global standard for industrial security, and critically, there is a severe global shortage of specialized OT cybersecurity professionals.
People who understand both the cyber and the physical industrial side.
Yes, only about 15% of cybersecurity professionals specialize in OT systems, leaving these networks dangerously undermanned.
So dealing with this scale of technological threat, from state-sponsored attacks to digital fraud, it requires robust governance. Which brings us to a major regulatory update. The new IT Rules Amendment of 2025.
Right, the Information Technology Amendment Rules 2025, they're set to take effect November 1st, 2025, and they address two massive areas of concern.
Accountability and content removal, and proactive measures against deepfakes.
Exactly.
Let's focus on that accountability layer first. How does the amendment change who can order online content to be taken down?
This is a major structural change. It's designed to inject accountability into the process. Moving forward, only officials at the high rank of Joint Secretary or Director General of Police, DGP, can legally order content removal.
So it significantly elevates the authority required. What's the practical implication of that?
It ensures that takedown orders are lawful, proportionate, and reviewed at the highest levels. It's meant to discourage misuse of these powers by more junior officials.
An attempt to balance public order with due process.
That's the idea.
And the second focus area, it tackles the rise of deepfakes, which ties right back to the CITA threats we were just discussing.
Absolutely. The rules place a strong mandatory focus on misinformation and deepfakes. Platforms and content creators will now be required to label and identify synthetic media.
A mandatory label.
Yes. It's a critical preemptive step. It's designed to protect citizens from identity misuse, prevent the spread of misinformation, especially during elections, and just safeguard democratic processes from AI-generated manipulation.
So if you create or share something synthetic that's meant to mislead, you have to label it as such.
You must.
This regulatory push seems essential for maintaining trust. But while we're fighting these phantom threats in cyberspace, we have to remember that physical borders are still major flashpoints.
Let's turn our attention to the physical edge of the map, starting with a persistent point of friction between India and Pakistan, the Sir Creek dispute.
Sir Creek is a fascinating place, geographically. It's not a fixed land boundary, it's not a clear river.
It's a 96-kilometer-long tidal estuary in the Indus River Delta, opening into the Arabian Sea. It's marshy, uninhabited, and the geography is inherently unstable. The line is always shifting with the tides.
And the dispute goes back over a century. What's the core disagreement over where the boundary actually lies?
It all hinges on how you interpret a 1914 resolution. Pakistan claims the boundary lies along the eastern bank of the creek. If that holds, Pakistan gets control over the entire creek.
And India advocates for the Thalweg principle. For our listeners, what does that mean?
The Thalweg principle is the internationally recognized legal standard for boundaries in navigable waterways. It dictates that the boundary should run through the middle of the deepest or midstream navigable channel.
And since the creek is navigable at high tide,
India argues the Thalweg principle should apply, which would split the creek down the middle, giving both countries control.
and the stakes here are enormous. It's not just about 96 kilometers of mud.
Not at all. It's about maritime rights. Control over Sir Creek directly impacts the demarcation of the Exclusive Economic Zone, the EEZ, in the Arabian Sea.
So a shift of a few kilometers at the mouth of the creek translates to thousands of square kilometers of maritime control.
Which determines crucial rights over fishing grounds and, more importantly, for offshore oil and gas exploration. It's about energy security.
And speaking of disputed lines, tensions have also recently escalated along the Durand Line.
Between Pakistan and Afghanistan, yes, one of South Asia's oldest and most volatile borders. It's about 2,640 kilometers long.
And the core of the dispute there is historical and ethnic.
It is. The line was imposed in 1893 by the British Raj. Afghanistan has consistently viewed it as an illegitimate colonial boundary.
Crucially, it divides the Pashtun ethnic group.
Cuts right through their ancestral lands, separating communities, which fuels insurgency and cross-border movement. Pakistan, on the other hand, views it as an internationally recognized permanent border.
So we have physical borders under intense geopolitical pressure and digital borders under constant sophisticated cyber siege. It brings us right back to that core idea of systemic resilience.
And that's really what we've unpacked today, two parallel and now converging security narratives.
On one hand, you have that strategic long-term push for self-reliance in physical tech.
The GS-87R, the NAVIC Integrated Parachute System, the Unified IRSA Communication Standard. These are tangible, huge steps towards strategic autonomy.
And on the other hand, we analyze these increasingly complex, often invisible threats in the digital domain.
Which require foundational science breakthroughs, like MOFs for the clean energy transition, and innovative governance, like the CITA scheme to defend against deepfakes.
The synthesis seems pretty clear.
It is. Technological self-reliance in defense is essential, but it has to be matched by equal resilience against these new, intangible threats. You can have the strongest fleet or the most sophisticated jets.
But if your communications network is fragmented, or your power grid is running on decades-old software,
or your national identity system is spoofable, you are fundamentally strategically vulnerable. The integrity of digital governance is the new frontier of national security.
it truly is. We talked about that Nobel-winning idea of creative destruction driving economic growth, but that concept applies just as fiercely to security itself. We see how quickly technology is changing the very definition of a border, from a physical line on a shifting map like Sir Creek to the secure digital perimeter around a data center. So here's a final provocative thought for you to consider. We're investing heavily in AI-driven systems like Saksham CUAS to counter physical threats. When a sophisticated drone can be stopped by purely electronic jamming, and a country's financial system can be crippled by a few lines of code. How long until our older physical concepts of security, maybe the role of a fixed border post or even certain types of heavy armor, become the technological equivalent of a typewriter? What physical security concept might be destroyed or rendered obsolete by the constant creative destruction of defense technology? That's something to mull over as you continue your own deep dive.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're glad you're here with us. You gave us the stack, the essential, and let's be honest, often pretty dense source material covering all the big shifts from October 2025.
Right, across policy, science, security, the economy, the whole gamut.
Exactly. And our task today isn't just to, summarize it. We're here to structuralize it. We want to build a cognitive roadmap for you.
That's the key. This isn't just recitation. It's about delivering high-yield knowledge, ensuring maximum recall when you actually need it.
We've split this deep dive into two parts.
First up is the prelims cheat sheet. This is your foundation, the names, the places, the must-know definitions.
And once that foundation is solid, we move to the mains value adds.
That's where we connect the dots. We take those facts and weave them into the bigger analytical frameworks.
So if you need to know not just what happened, but why it's a part of a larger trend, this is where we're headed.
Our whole focus is on delivering those connections, showing you how, say, a Nobel Prize and a domestic manufacturing scheme are actually two sides of the same coin.
Okay, let's unpack this and jump right into the necessary facts.
All right, so we need to establish that bedrock of knowledge first, the critical facts that everything else builds on.
The prelims cheat sheet.
Exactly. We'll start with some key environmental and geographical milestones.
Let's begin with what you called a genuine success story in conservation, the Barnawapara Wildlife Sanctuary.
Yes, located in the Volota Bazar district of Chhattisgarh.
Okay, Barnawapara. And the ecological achievement. What puts it on our list this month?
The achievement is the successful black buck revival plan.
Ah, the black buck. Weren't they basically gone from there?
Completely. The species had been declared locally extinct in Chhattisgarh by 2017.
Wow.
I mean, that's a stark failure point. But this concerted 5-year plan, kicked off in 2021, actually worked. They reintroduced them, stabilized the population.
So how did they do it? Just move them in and hope for the best?
No, it was much more involved. It meant relocating individuals from other safe zones and then intensely managing this new habitat for them.
And what about the habitat itself? What should we know about the ecosystem there?
It's a classic central Indian forest. So it's dominated by teak and sal forests.
Okay, teak and sal.
And that detail matters because the success depended on protecting the open grassland patches inside the forest. That's the black buck's preferred habitat.
So it's a balancing act.
A huge balancing act between protecting those grasslands and dealing with the commercial pressures on the teak and sal trees all around them. It's a real model for species revival.
A fantastic ecological turnaround. Okay, let's shift from a wildlife habitat to a much more volatile geopolitical fault line, Sur Creek.
A very thin but very important strip of water.
It's a 96-kilometer-long tidal estuary separating Gujarat from Pakistan's Sindh province. The thing is, it's not really navigable for big ships, so why is there so much high-stakes policy around this one muddy creek?
It's all about geometry, not navigation. The line that's drawn down the middle of that estuary that becomes the baseline from which all maritime rights extend out into the Arabian Sea.
You mean the exclusive economic zones, the EEZs?
Exactly, the EEZ and the continental shelf. We're talking about rights that extend up to 200 nautical miles offshore.
And that's where the resource rights come in, oil, gas, fishing.
Precisely. So if Pakistan's claim to the Eastern Bank is accepted, India stands to lose a huge chunk of its potential EEZ.
And India's counterargument is based on what principle?
The Thalweg principle. It's an international legal doctrine, usually for rivers, which says the boundary should run through the middle of the deepest, most navigable channel.
But wait, if the creek is tidal and the channel shifts, how do you even define the Thalweg?
And that is the absolute heart of the dispute. India argues that because it's a tidal estuary and some navigation exists, the principle still applies. They point to a 1925 map that generally aligns with it.
So this is a long-standing issue.
Goes all the way back to a 1914 resolution. But it's been heating up, especially after the defense minister's recent comments about rapid infrastructure development in border states. Sur Creek is implicitly part of that posture.
A deep dive into a thin strip of water indeed. Okay, staying with international standards, let's look at the Blue Flag Beaches certification. Who's the granting body for this?
The authority here is the Foundation for Environmental Education, or FEE. They're an international nonprofit based in Denmark.
And the fact that it's a third-party certification is what gives it weight.
It's essential. To even qualify, a beach has to meet 33 really stringent criteria. It covers everything from water quality and safety to environmental management and education, and they monitor it every year.
So how is India doing? What's our latest status as of 2025?
We're seeing real growth. The total now stands at 18 certified Blue Flag beaches.
18. And the source material highlighted a big contribution from one state in particular.
That's right. The 5 most recent additions all came from Maharashtra, Srivardhan, Nagaon, Purnaka, Guhagar, and Ladgar.
And the fact that they all passed, especially the water quality test, this is a lot.
It's a huge statement. It means no point source pollution, top microbiological standards. It signals real improvements in local infrastructure in those districts.
Okay, let's pivot to strategic infrastructure, the Sawalkote hydro project. We know it just received fresh environmental clearance and it's being fast-tracked. Where is it and why is the timing so critical?
It's located on the Chenab River in the Ramban district of Jammu and Kashmir.
The Chenab.
And the timing is paramount. This acceleration is happening right after India decided to suspend the Indus Waters Treaty back in April 2025.
So this project isn't just about generating power.
Not at all. It's a statement. The suspension of the IWT was a strategic move to allow India to utilize its maximum permissible share of the western river waters. That's the Chenab, Indus, and Jhelum.
And this project is a direct result of that policy shift.
Absolutely. Sawalkote is a massive run-of-the-river scheme. We're talking an installed capacity of 1,856 megawatts. It needs a 192.5-meter-high concrete gravity dam.
So expediting it sends a clear signal.
A very clear signal about maximizing the use of those Western River Basin resources, which obviously has major implications for downstream states.
Right. It places it right at that intersection of energy security, water politics, and national security. Let's shift now to defense and space, specifically the GSAT-7R satellite. Who is this for and what can it do?
GSAT-7R is a dedicated military satellite, specifically for the Indian Navy.
Okay, for the Navy. And in practical terms, what capabilities does it add? Is it just a better phone line?
It's so much more than that. It provides secure, high-bandwidth communication links between naval ships, submarines, aircraft, everything operating across the huge expanse of the Indian Ocean region.
So it's really a secure, integrated data network for the whole fleet.
Exactly. It's a massive upgrade for what's called C4ISR capabilities. Command, control, communications, computers, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance.
Which is critical given the operational tempo in the Indo-Pacific.
It's vital. And because it's indigenously developed, it's a huge boost for the Atmanirbhar initiative in space defense. It means less latency and, crucially, you prevent external surveillance or jamming. That's non-negotiable for real-time maritime domain awareness.
All right, let's move to the breakthroughs in science, starting with the big headlines from this month, the Nobel Prizes.
The Nobels.
Let's start with the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences 2025. The winners are Joel Mahor, Philippe Aghion, and Peter Howitt. Their work is, well, it's the theoretical backbone for a lot of what we'll discuss later, so let's get this concept clear.
We have to. Their key contribution is explaining sustained economic growth.
Sustained growth.
They moved us past the simple factors, labor, capital. They identified technological progress and innovation as the absolute engine of long-term growth.
And Mark, your specific contribution was what?
Mark here gave us the concept of useful knowledge. He explained that big economic leaps happen when you combine two types of knowledge. First, propositional knowledge, the pure science, the theory of why things work.
Okay, the what?
And second, prescriptive knowledge, the practical applied engineering of how to make things work.
Theory meets practice, and that leads to innovation.
That's the spark.
So where does that famous phrase, creative destruction, fit into all this?
That's the contribution of Aghion and Howitt. They formalized the theory. It basically argues that economic development is inherently disruptive. Growth doesn't just fill in gaps. It constantly revolutionizes the economic structure from the inside.
Give us a quick example of creative destruction that really makes it stick.
The easiest one is the digital camera. Think about Kodak. They were the king of film photography. The digital camera didn't just compete with film. It fundamentally destroyed the economic model of film, processing labs, the whole thing.
And replaced it with a new, higher value model.
Exactly. A model based on digital sensors and software. That constant replacement of the old with the new, the destruction that's necessary for creation, that's the engine they identified. And it's so important for economies trying to innovate their way forward.
Perfectly framed. Now for the Nobel Prize in Chemistry 2025. The winners are Susumu Kitagawa, Richard Robson, and Omar Yagi. The topic: Metal Organic Frameworks, or MOFs.
MOFs.
This sounds incredibly complex. What are they structurally, and why are they so revolutionary?
They really are revolutionary materials. So structurally, think of MOFs as like three-dimensional ultra-porous scaffolds. Crystalline compounds. They're built by linking metal ions, which act like rigid joints, with organic molecules, which act as the long, flexible struts connecting them.
And the result is what? A very strong but light material.
The result is a highly ordered, stable structure with an unbelievable internal surface area. To give you a sense of scale, a single gram of a MOF can have the surface area of an entire football field.
A football field in 1 gram? That has to be why the applications are so important for climate tech.
Absolutely. That massive surface area lets them act like super efficient molecular sponges. Kitagawa showed they're flexible. They can literally breathe to capture or release specific molecules. Yagi made them stable enough for industrial use.
And the application?
Game-changing. Capturing water directly from desert air. And the big one, highly efficient and safe storage of gases like coal and methane. This is critical for carbon capture, for clean energy like hydrogen storage. It could redefine how we manage greenhouse gases.
Okay, a high-yield, high-impact fact, for sure. Let's move to institutional and policy developments. October 1st, 2025 marked the UPSC Centenary.
100 years.
Can you anchor that milestone for us in its history? Where did it come from?
The UPSC, the Union Public Service Commission, was established in 1926, and it traces back directly to the recommendations of the Lee Commission, which was appointed in 1924.
The Lee Commission.
Right. It was set up to look into the structure and recruitment for the superior civil services in India back in the colonial era.
So it's more than just a date. It really symbolizes that whole historical shift towards the Indianization of the civil services and establishing a system based on merit.
Exactly. It's a foundational pillar. Its whole purpose is to be the guardian of meritocracy, ensuring fairness and impartiality in recruitment. That's the bedrock of our administrative structure.
All right, let's talk digital governance. UADI launched the CITA scheme. What does CITA stand for, and what's it trying to fix?
CITA stands for the Scheme for Innovation and Technology Association with Aadhaar.
Okay.
And its core mission is to fortify India's massive digital identity ecosystem against the new wave of hyper-realistic attacks. We're talking specifically about deepfakes, spoofing, and very advanced biometric fraud.
So how does the scheme actually do that?
It does it by sponsoring homegrown research and innovation challenges. A huge focus is on developing robust presentation attack detection, or PAD, tools.
Presentation attack detection, what is that?
PAT technology is what allows a system to tell the difference between a live human biometric, like your actual face, and a fake artifact, like a high-res photo, 3D mask, or a video replay attack.
And that's critical now.
It's absolutely critical. If deep fakes can fool a camera, they can potentially subvert all the financial and identity verification services that are linked to Aadhaar.
And that links perfectly to the next point, the IT Amendment Rules 2025. There's a key change here about who can order content to be taken down.
Yes, a big change. The new provision states that online content removal orders must now be issued only by officials at the rank of Joint Secretary or Director General of Police, a DGP, or higher.
So it moves the decision way up the chain of command.
It significantly elevates the level of accountability. The goal is to enhance transparency and ensure that any decision that impacts freedom of speech is made by a senior responsible authority. It's meant to reduce the potential for misuse at lower levels.
I see the intent, but I have to ask, does moving it up to a joint secretary just move the potential vulnerability up the ladder?
That's the structural question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It certainly helps, but its real effectiveness depends on the regulatory structure around it, the procedures they have to follow, the right to judicial review.
That it also tackles deepfakes directly.
It does. It mandates clear labeling and identification for all synthetic or AI-generated media. The goal is to make it easier to track and hold platforms accountable for harmful, unlabeled synthetic content. It's a step towards transparency.
That concludes our prelims cheat sheet. A bit dense, but we have the names, places, and milestones locked down.
Right. Now we transition.
Yeah.
We move from what happened to why it matters.
Connecting all these facts into the bigger analytical framework.
Exactly. This is where we shift from just retaining knowledge to actually applying it. We're going to weave things like the UPSC's role, the digital security schemes, and that economics Nobel into the broader narrative.
Starting with society, analyzing vulnerability and essential services. The tragic stampede in Chabahar, Tamil Nadu, was a flashpoint, and the analytical concept we're drawing from it is framing emergency care not as a service, but as a constitutional duty.
And that is a critical legal and moral distinction. Article 21 guarantees the right to life, and the Supreme Court has said time and again that this includes the right to health and medical care.
So when a disaster hits, the state's response is a direct test of its commitment to Article 21.
It is. And the source material highlights the global benchmarks that define an adequate response.
Yeah.
You have the golden hour, that first 60 minutes after a trauma where care is most critical.
Right.
And now there's the even more urgent platinum 10 minutes. That's the target for the first responder to even get to the scene.
And Tamil Nadu's average is 10 minutes and 14 seconds, which is impressive, but the national picture is much more varied.
It's hugely varied. And if we really adopt this constitutional duty framework, what structural changes does that imply?
Well, a duty implies standards.
Federal standards and federal oversight, which we just don't have right now. The big recommendation is to establish a National Emergency Services Regulatory Authority.
A national authority.
Yes, a body that would go beyond the current state-level 1-8 systems. Its job would be standardization training protocols, equipment standards, and crucially, mandating interoperability between police, fire, and medical services.
So you're treating the emergency response system like any other piece of critical national infrastructure, like the power grid.
Precisely. And it has to address the people, too. National certification and pay parity for paramedics, so we retain these skilled professionals. It means using tech like AI for predictive dispatch as a national standard, not just a state-by-state innovation.
That covers immediate vulnerability. But there's a longer-term societal challenge, our demographic evolution. We talk a lot about the demographic dividend, but the analysis needs to be more sophisticated.
It needs to move beyond just optimism to a rights-based model that recognizes our shifting age structures. Meaning, we have to plan for the long term. India is aging, and it's aging rapidly. So when we discuss elderly welfare pensions, healthcare, the framework can't be based on charity. It must be rights-based. Elderly citizens have a right to dignity and security.
And we often hear the term feminization of aging in this context. Can you define that for us?
It's a critical nuance. Women generally live longer than men. That's a biological fact. This is often compounded by social factors. So the oldest segment of our population is disproportionately female and often widowed or living alone. If our policies, like widow pensions or healthcare access, aren't designed with that specific reality in mind, they will fail, recognizing that shifting age structure is how we make sure the demographic dividend is responsible and inclusive.
Let's move to urban, reforming fiscal architecture for growth. The big idea here is shifting urban governance from just administrative control to a full-blown economic and environmental strategy. And the data point here is, well, it's jaw-dropping.
It really is. It highlights the central paradox of Indian urbanization. Our municipalities contribute nearly 2/3 of the national GDP.
2/3.
The engines of the economy.
The engines, yet they collectively control less than 1% of the total tax revenue.
Less than 1%? How is that even possible? What's the historical reason for starving our cities of cash? Historically, cities relied on inefficient taxes like octroi, which were abolished. Property taxes, which are the global standard for city revenue, are. Well, they're often poorly assessed, undercollected, or capped by state governments for political reasons.
And the states are reluctant to give up power.
That's the core of it. State governments are often unwilling to devolve the fiscal and functional autonomy that was granted under the 74th Constitutional Amendment. They hoard revenue powers like stamp duties, and that prevents cities from financing their own infrastructure.
So this data point demands a specific solution, especially when we talk about things like municipal bonds.
Exactly. For municipal bonds to work, the city has to show investors it has a secure, independent revenue stream to pay them back.
And some cities have managed it?
Cities like Indore and Ahmedabad, yes. They've been successful because they demonstrated strong governance and efficient tax collection. But without systemic fiscal reform, allowing cities to set their own tax rates, bonds will always be the exception, not the rule.
So the way forward isn't just about finding new financing tricks. It's about comprehensive planning.
It has to be. Planning needs to move beyond just being land use control. The recommendation is to integrate economic and spatial planning.
What does that mean in practice?
It means that when you plan infrastructure, you have to explicitly consider how it's going to generate growth, attract industry, and boost productivity. It's not just about zoning. And on top of that, adopting climate-resilient frameworks is completely non-negotiable.
And a climate-resilient framework for an Indian city looks like what?
It means reforming old town planning acts to mandate low-carbon mobility-dedicated bus lanes, metro networks. It means strict enforcement of water harvesting to prevent urban flooding, which is a massive financial drain every monsoon.
So the goal is to position cities as both growth engines and climate battlegrounds.
Exactly, where resilience is built into every single decision, ensuring we can actually meet that Viksit Bharat 2047 vision sustainably.
Okay, let's pivot to our third pillar, security. New dimensions of digital exploitation. We're connecting the defense strategies like CITA and the IT rules to a huge emerging threat.
The analytical concept here is the rise of cyber-enabled exploitation and the erosion of public trust that follows. Let's start with the infrastructure risk, what's called OTIT convergence.
OTIT convergence, explain that.
So, for efficiency, we've connected our industrial control systems, that's the OT, or operational technology that runs physical things in factories, with our standard IT systems, the internet, our office networks.
And that's created a bigger target.
A dramatically expanded attack surface. The sources show a 40% growth in this convergence just between 2020 and 2024.
Why is that so risky? Why does an attack on an office computer now threaten a power plant?
Because the boundary between them is blurred. State-sponsored hackers can find one vulnerability in the IT network and use it to jump over into the OT network. They specifically target legacy SCADA systems,
SCADA systems.
supervisory control, and data acquisition. These are the systems that manage things like pipeline flow or turbine operations. They were never designed to be connected to the internet, so they often lack modern security.
And the source material points out a huge spending gap in protecting them.
A massive gap. Companies often spend 10 times more on IT security than OT security. This creates a huge forensic blind spot. We saw the playbook for this with the NotPetya attack, which showed how critical infrastructure can be crippled by what starts as a simple software worm.
That's the big infrastructure risk. Now let's bring it down to the citizen level. Social engineering, fraud job scams, phishing, all of it is rampant. How do we analyze this as a security concept?
We have to move beyond just calling it cybercrime or fraud. The pervasive, coercive nature of these scams, especially when you add in technology like deepfakes and voice spoofing, it traps citizens financially and psychologically.
So you're saying it's a form of exploitation?
It's cyber exploitation.
Define that more clearly for us.
Cyber exploitation, in this context, is using sophisticated digital tools to systematically strip people of their financial resources and their psychological safety. It's coercive, it's relentless, and it targets the vulnerable. You could even synthesize it as a form of cyber slavery.
Cyber slavery, that's a powerful term.
It is. It exploits a person's financial position, which is protected under Article 300A, the right to property. It traps them in debt. It really intersects cybercrime with the models we usually associate with human trafficking, because the victims are controlled by unseen, anonymous actors.
A crucial concept for understanding the real impact of these threats. Okay, finally, let's analyze the economy. Breaking the middle income trap.
And this takes us right back to that economics Nobel. The work of Mulcair, Aghion, and Howitt gives us the why.
The middle income trap. Remind us what that is.
It's that difficult development stage where a country's wages have risen so it can no longer compete on just low labor costs. But it hasn't yet developed the high-level, innovation-driven economy to compete with advanced nations.
It gets stuck.
It gets stuck in the middle.
So how do you break free?
You have to transform your economy from cost-based competition, just assembling things, to innovation-based specialization. That requires huge, continuous investment in homegrown research and development. Simply assembling imported parts, even at a massive scale, isn't enough. It doesn't create proprietary value.
So policy has to actively push manufacturing up the value chain. And we have a couple of examples of this.
Two prime examples. First, the Maha MedTech mission. This is strategic because India imports something like 80% of our medical devices. This mission aims to boost domestic manufacturing with significant funding, up to 25 crore rupees for specific projects.
But innovation needs more than just money. How does the mission get these ideas from the lab to the market?
It creates an ecosystem around them. It includes things like Patent Mitra to help innovators with IP protection, and MedTech Mitra to guide them through the complex regulatory clearances. It's a system designed to turn that useful knowledge we talked about into actual market-ready products.
And in the electronics sector, there was the PLI component scheme.
Right. That scheme directly attacks our weakness in components. The goal is to boost domestic value addition, or DVA, in electronics. For years, we've been good at assembling phones, but all the critical high-value parts, the chips, the displays, were imported.
And this scheme tries to change that.
It offers incentives specifically for companies that manufacture those critical subassemblies and capital equipment here in India, integrating our firms into the global value chains.
So both of these schemes are trying to operationalize that central lesson from the economics Nobel.
That's the high-yield takeaway. The path to real prosperity is engineered through innovation, not just low-cost production. If India succeeds in DVA, we break the middle-income trap. If we don't, we stay reliant on foreign tech for our core components.
This has been a monumental synthesis. From tidal estuaries to the philosophy of economic growth, from conservation success to the deep vulnerabilities of our digital society, October 2025 is now in your pocket. Revise these hooks and you won't forget them. Final membership pitch. If we simplified your prep today, and if you can afford it, please hit join. Your support powers our research team. Shout out and CTA. To our members, thank you. Everyone, like, share, and tell us in the comments which Nobel discovery excited you the most. This is The Deep Dive. Stay focused, keep grinding, Jai Hind.
We spent a lot of time talking about how the CITA scheme is fortifying your digital identity here in India. And we've discussed the sophistication of state-sponsored hackers. So consider this global trend. The European Union's new entry-exit system is set to phase out manual passport stamping by April 2026. It will rely purely on automated biometric verification for all non-EU visitors, including you. When governments increasingly rely entirely on centralized biometric data for security and tracking data about you, what happens when, not if, that critical infrastructure is targeted by the same sophisticated hackers we've been talking about? Is the undeniable efficiency of seamless digital travel really worth the enhanced systemic vulnerability of our centralized digital selves? Something important to mull over as you prepare for a world where your face is your passport.